Hey. We're not rocking, we're not stoning. We don't have cooling notes. Oh, Paul. Alright, what are we looking at?
Holy baby.
Oh, not that. Ops. Okay. There. I don't even know what I'm looking for here. FFXIV Media Tour. Open Renan. Wait, did Zeno go to the media tour? He's got videos 6 hours ago too. Oh wow, he tricked us. Classic. It's funny.
We got to
Dragoon, Samurai, Reaper, Gunbreaker, Dancer, Ninja, White Mage. I like these changes. It's like 2 minutes long. Oh boy. Viper Sage. Monk, Red Mage, Dark Knight, Scholar. Which one are we watching? The best one. What is that? What is this at the top? To the Sage.
I was somehow lucky enough to receive an invitation to the Dawn Trail Media Tour, where I was given the opportunity to test out the level 100 iterations of all 21 of the game's jobs. In order to make sure you can get all the information you want quickly, I've sectioned each of my media.
This is gonna be a...
Hey everyone, my name is Whoops, and I was fortunate enough to be invited to the final
Oh my god, that's an hour long.
Tour videos into 3 sections. Firstly comes the changes and additions, including tooltips. Then I will talk more in depth on how I feel about the jobs. It's here that I'll talk about the various little bits and pieces that I tested, how this will shift their playstyle, and give you a bit of a primer of exactly what to expect going into the next expansion.
Alright.
Let's check out what Sage gained, and more importantly, whether Pancardia actually ended up being called Pancardia. Psyche is added at level 92, an off-global offensive ability that's available every minute. This does 600 potency of damage on a target and deals AoE damage as well. Soteria had its cooldown reduced from 90 seconds to 60, which is one we knew was coming from the previous job action trailer. Eucrasian Prognosis.
Huh? How do we know that? From the job action trailer. What? Exciting? Oh yeah, none of this is going to be exciting.
Receives a straight upgrade in the form of Eucrasian Prognosis 2.
They said it. Okay, so not... Okay, so not from the job action trailer, from the live letter.
In fact, all the healers will see a new version of their de facto AoE healing spell. Eucrasian Dyscrasia was also added,
Alright.
allowing Eucrasia to affect your AoE filler ability Dyscrasia to get off an AoE dot centered on the player. Physis 2 also gets a buff, extending the HP recovery secondary effect from 10 seconds to 15, making it fully equal with the regen effect in duration. Finally, at level 100 they get Philosophia, a mitigation on a 3-minute cooldown.
Mitigation? Huh?
This skill increases healing magic potency by 20% and also provides party members the effect of eudaimonia for 20 seconds. This is Pancardia, meaning that they get a
There's no mid on that.
150 potency heal every time you land a spell, but you've got to note that this says spell and isn't limited to offensive actions.
So when it's healing magic potency, is that GCDs or is it everything? Is that also OGCDs? Only GCD, okay.
Meaning that even if you do a healing GCD instead of a DPS one, it'll still proc the effect. So Sage on the surface seems like it didn't change at all, but that's actually not true. Not only did they get Psyche to augment their DPS kit, which is a really nice addition, but as of right now in the Mediator build, Eucrasian Dyscrasia outputs 400 potency across its full duration. You gain a trait to increase the damage that Dosis deals, which puts it at 360 during Dawntrail, which means that yes, this new AoE dot is a DPS gain on one target. A very, very small one, but a gain nonetheless. Basically, this dot needs to stay up for essentially its full duration.
Can you have both dots up?
To be a DPS gain, giving you this risky way of eking out a tiny bit more damage on an enemy if you know they're going to survive and to be targetable for an extended period of time. It's not quite the same, but it feels a little bit like a spiritual successor to Miasma 2, and I'm honestly just elated that it exists at all. Whether this current value will survive through to release though, we're gonna have to wait and see. Soteria having its cooldown reduced is somewhat weird to me actually, so Scholar also got a cooldown reduction in the form of Recitation, which means that Recitation and Soteria are considered equitable skills as far as SE are concerned, but they're not. Recitation is multifaceted and can aid in healing single target or AoE situations, as well as putting up powerful AoE shields, whereas Soteria is so much more limited in scope. Honestly, I would have expected Zoe to get that cooldown reduction instead. Philosophia is kind of decent. I honestly think in a bubble it's a lovely new addition to have, but the issue comes along when you start comparing it in specific cases to the new offering that Scholar receives in Seraphism. In a progression or an intense healing situation, the throughput and raw shielding that Scholar can bring thanks to their new tools kind of makes Sage's toys pale in comparison. That said, when you aren't actively using GCD heals and you want to press this new ability passively to get the group tops over a period of time using the regens, it's definitely the better of the two in terms of the total potency that it can put out on a party.
But like, that's not as important. Like, by far what's more important is the stronger shields on Scholar for like actual hard healing, like quote unquote checks. Especially like, I mean, you'd probably still use this. I feel like the cure potency, I don't know. It's just like, I can't think of a time in this game where I'm like, oh fuck yeah, AoE Cardia, that's gonna be pog for this part. It like you can just so easily heal with your other OGCDs between, you know, AoE damage in this game. Like, there's just not enough rapid succession AoE damage, and even then, like, this isn't even gonna, like, you know, it's 150 potency every couple seconds from your GCDs. It's, yeah. I mean, the 20% buff is the best part of this, to be honest. And then if, like, I'd even use this during downtime, like during Delta Trio and Tom.
Expected something a little bit more noteworthy.
Just because who cares? Who cares about this?
Capstone. Sage's DPS additions make it a whole lot more interesting to me, and a job that didn't seem to be changing whatsoever is actually enhancing in terms of depth quite a lot, providing interesting optimization potential for.
So he said, can you explain why people are blowing a gasket to the changes? Wait, what are you talking about?
Confident players without harming the average enjoyer in the slightest, and they also get a couple more fun tools to help them boost their shielding and passive healing capabilities. But whether it will be enough to compete with Scholar in a progression setting is yet to be seen. I'm basically done talking about my thoughts, but I'll leave you firstly with the tooltips on everything that was added or changed for the Mediator build.
Wait, so not once in the gameplay did they try to put both dots up? in the video, or did they? Or did he say?
On a 3-minute cooldown.
Or they?
This skill
They're a cat girl, I don't know.
That yes, this to
But,
be a DPS
Tubes,
game,
I'm sorry.
giving you this risky way of eking out a tiny bit more damage on an
Seen screens of
enemy
it.
if you know they're going to survive and to be targetable for an extended period of time.
That's so weird to me, because having like a permanent stackable second dot compared to Scholar, I'm kind of surprised this doesn't have like a cooldown. I mean, this just makes, honestly, just makes Sage more fun for dungeons. Happy Showdown, okay. Scholar stays losing in. I will never do like a dungeon as a Scholar if I can do it as a Sage. Ever.
It's not quite the same, but
Alright, let's look at the Scholar, I guess. The AoE dot, yeah, isn't, and it's tied to fucking chain. Yeah, that's dumb. That's kind of silly. Okay.
I was somehow lucky enough to receive an invitation to the Dawn Trail Media Tour, where I was given the opportunity to test out the level 100 iterations of all 21 of the game's jobs. Access to. Scholar is my favourite job in the entire game, but I felt somewhat like a scorned lover for a long time because the Square Enix team
Chain lasts for 20. Wait, I think I saw that chain for 20 seconds.
have made a few design decisions that I just don't agree with regarding the way its abilities interact with one another. Before I tell you what's new about Scholar, I just want to say that while I was testing this job, part of it made me audibly and fairly loudly go, I can't fucking believe they did that, while laughing during the middle of the testing hall, and I definitely got a few weird looks.
Oh, great.
Recitation's cooldown is reducing from 90 seconds to 60 seconds. We knew this was coming, and I predicted that the
So if they're doing this, then surely they'll reduce the cooldown on deploy, right? Surely.
reduction would be to about 60, so this is a very positive yet unsurprising addition. At level 100, Scholar gains Seraphism. Seraphism is a stance that will persist for 20
No, they didn't.
seconds
Surely.
on a 3-minute cooldown.
They just forgot,
You
and it'll be
cannot
on
use
the
it while under the effects of dissipation. It gives you instant cast to your Eloquium and Succor. It buffs Adlo's potency by 60 and Succor's by 40, changes their names to Manifestation and Accession, resets the cooldown for emergency tactics, and then makes it a 1-second cooldown for the entirety of Seraphism's persistence, and it provides a 100 potency AoE regen for the party. Yes, this is the I have decided we will not be dying to damage button.
How does Sage get what they get, and then Scholar gets, like, what? That is crazy.
Yes, this is insane for progression settings. And also, yes, this is the skill that I was talking about. Chain Stratagem has been increased to 20 seconds, which is a change that seems to have been made pretty much across the board in terms of raid buffs. They've all been normalized at 20 seconds of duration. Succor receives a straight upgrade and becomes Consultation. In fact, all the healers will see a new version of the de facto AoE healing spell. We also got a new DPS attack in the form of Baneful Impaction. This is an off-global combo action from Chain Stratagem, and is a 140 potency.
Oh, like Bane, like when you would spread your dots.
AoE dot that lasts for 15 seconds. Interestingly, it has no drop-off at all on multiple targets either. This is powerful, and is now the biggest nuke in Scholar's kit on the whole. I'm really excited about Dawn Trail's iteration of Scholar. Unless things change drastically, this will be the job that I bring into Arcadian Savage progression, and for good reason. Not only is Recitation an incredibly useful, powerful tool at the 90 second, further buffing it by reducing the cooldown means that Scholars can not only deal with incoming threats more effectively, but they can also make more use of their Aetherflow stacks on average by putting them into energy drains. allowing them to output closer to their DPS ceiling more easily.
Oh
Seraphism
boy.
is an absolute game changer. It's a valuable cooldown in almost every situation. When you're comfy and you just want a nice AoE regen, it's there for you. When the party is dropping like flies and you need to triage and stabilize, it will allow you to do that even better than ever before, even if your co-healer's dead. In fact, it's one of those tools which almost feels made for those moments where you need to solo heal so that your co-healer or caster can get a raise off. Having freedom of movement while healing, buffed tools that can
Constipation.
facilitate stronger
No.
spread adlos than ever, or, well, I suppose it's a spread manifestation in this case, and the ability to become what is essentially a temporary pure healer in terms of healing potency output for a little while is just something else. It definitely loses a lot of value compared to Sage's level 100 offering when you're not in those healing situations though, and that's a very important consideration to make, I think. Baleful Impaction is also really strong in terms of how much damage it does, and it's definitely nice to have. I mentioned this in my other healer videos, but I'm just really happy that every healer has gained at least one new addition in the way of offensive abilities in the first time for what feels like forever. Hopefully we see more of this in 8.0. One thing I was surprised to see, however, was not only the continued existence of, but the further doubling down on Dissipation locking you out of your essential healing kit. The way that Dissipation, and to a lesser extent Seraph, interact with some of your tools, like Fey Blessing, Fey Union, and now with the new Seraphism, all of this makes the job feel kind of awkward sometimes. I'm very much a fan of friction within a job rotation or in terms of the way you need to think about things to play a job optimally, but my preference is for that friction to come from other sources than whether—
Bro, it's gonna forever be a mess. At this point, they just don't give a rip, to be honest, because there's just so much shit now. Like, Seraphism, Dissipation, Seraph, with, like, and then you're talking about, like, you know, your Whispering Dawn, Fey Blessing, Aether Pact, like, just all this shit. Does your fairy go away when you use Seraphism?
you can use your essential healing tools at all at specific times. On the whole though,
Okay.
Scholar was the highlight from the 4 healers for me.
At least there's
I
that.
just can't wait to play more of it. And after taking a bit of a hiatus from the job in
Seraph.
Endwalker, jumping back in next expansion is probably the most excited I am for Dawn
They
Trail in
need to
general.
use it.
I'm basically done talking about my thoughts, but I'll leave you firstly with the tooltips on everything that was added or changed for the Media Tour build of Dawn Trail Scholar, and secondly, while you look at them, my thanks for watching this video. I really do appreciate you taking the time to listen to my thoughts and yapping for way too long.
Yeah.
Have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll be genuinely curious to
Does that mean you can you use it while you're in Seraph? While Seraph is out?
see what you think of what you've seen and heard today, so please do let me know in the comments section,
I would hope so.
especially if there's any additional questions or things.
Okay. I mean, yeah. Scholar's gonna be the raid healer. Sage gonna be what I play in dungeons. Dong Trail, that's up to you. Even more, yeah. And still the most boring. Fuck. I'm kind of surprised that like Sage's AoE dot is no cooldown. You can use it whenever you want, and then Scholars is tied. Why tie Scholars AoE dot to a fucking 2-minute single target cooldown? It's weird to me, but whatever.
Things I can clear up for you.
Weird. Intended. I mean, even when you're talking like, think about like I know maybe I'm not allowed to. Maybe I'm not allowed to be like, oh, well, I mean, like think about like dungeon balance because dungeons are such a joke in this game, but like I feel like at some point you have to like take into consideration the amount of fun that players have while doing dungeons with these jobs as like a game developer for how like healthy your game is. And when I go into a dungeon on Scholar and I do nothing but press fucking Art of War nonstop, how is that okay compared to going in with Sage and having like 6 different DPS spells now, which is just like obviously better and more fun. I don't know, kind of crazy to me. But like maybe they just don't care. Maybe just don't give a heck because it's a dungeon. But like I think it's so dumb that Scholar's got like nothing and Sage gets all this fun stuff. They don't give a hoot.
We got to see the dawn.
Anything Astro. 8 minutes.
The heist of the century, I was somehow lucky. With the previous card system being completely undrawn, what we have in its place are Astral and Umbral draws on a 60-second cooldown. They share a button but alternate, so you'll get Astral draw, then Umbral draw, continuing to cycle from then on. Each time you draw, you'll receive 4 cards, 3 standard cards and a crown card. This is not RNG. The even minute Astral draw will give you Balance, Arrow, Spire, and Lord, and the Umbral draw will give you Arrow,
Yeah, I wouldn't
Bow,
count Criterion
and
and like
Lady.
for stuff
These
like
cards
that.
are specifically bound to 4 separate buttons: card play 1, 2, 3, and crown play, and you find the best situation to use them freely until the next draw becomes available. But what does each card do? Balance and Spear, the DPS cards, are pretty much unchanged. Balance still provides a 15-second 6% damage buff to a melee target or a 3% buff to a ranged, with Spear doing the same but with the higher percentage damage buff going to ranged. All of the 6 core cards are still single target and have a 15-second duration.
I mean, for Criterion though, how often do you even pull more than like 3 things at a time? Because I mean, I can't remember in the 2 Criterions that I've done, like you've got a few like 3 enemy pulls, and then you got the single target ones later.
As a little side note, Arrow is now a 10% healing received buff to the target, making it an excellent tank tool. Spire is a 400 potency shield.
Whoa, shield.
Bowl is a 10% damage reduction, and Ewer is a 200 potency regen. Lord and Lady are damage reduction, and Ewer is a 200 potency regen. Lord and Lady are unchanged in their functionality as well, with the Lord providing AoE DPS and Lady providing AoE heals. So every minute you will have a damage buffing card, a defensive buff card, and something that directly provides results on the HP bar of your target. Helios Conjunction is an upgraded version of Aspected Helios. In fact, all the healers will see a new version of their de facto AoE healing spell. Divination now has an OGCD combo action coming off of it in the form of Oracle, which does AoE DPS and gives Ast a little extra shot in their offensive toolkit.
That's cool.
There's also a third stat of Essential Dignity unlocked during the leveling process.
3D, 3Z.
Lastly, they get Sun Sign at level 100, which is actually an OGCD optional proc from Neutral Sect, providing 10% AoE mitigation to the raid for 15 seconds. Divination had its duration increased from 15 seconds to 20 seconds. This is a change they seem to have made pretty much across the board to raid buffs, bringing them all in line at that longer duration. So what do I think of the changes? Firstly, let's quickly talk about cards. I tested out holding onto my drawn deck, waiting for the cooldown to come back up and drawing again to see if they overwrite, and I can confirm that they do, so there's no room for shenanigans with holding onto certain cards across multiple draws. It's likely going to end up best to play your ranged card right before the next draw becomes available, allowing them to catch part of the 2-minute raid buff windows before you then redraw, play your melee card and lord alongside divination and the new offensive OGCD. So, to an extent, for Astros that loved the busy buff windows, there's still an element of that present. It's not been completely scuppered, but instead made a little less knowledge intensive on who the correct card target will be at any given moment, just sheerly through the fact that you'll never be in a situation in full party content where you need to use, for example, 2 melee cards in quick succession. Because of that, it's definitely a lot easier, but it maintains the spirit of those frenzied bursts. Interestingly, this may mean that Astros still traditionally locks their light speed to the 2-minute windows in a lot of situations to keep those plays perfectly timed, which was not something I expected at all. We'll see how it develops as we get more time with the jobs, I guess. The healing kit being practically unchanged, in my opinion, is an absolute blessing. I loved Astro's healing, and whilst it definitely is a bit more troublesome to play in Party Finder properly than something like a White Mage's, it's so incredibly rewarding to plan your heals properly and execute a plan, so I'm glad that we still get to do that. Neutral Sect was one of those abilities that was either incredible or absolutely worthless depending on your comfort with the fight. And I think the direction Square Enix have taken in regards to providing OGCD value to some tools that traditionally need GCD healing to make use of is fantastic. This is something I noticed they've made quite a bit of a focused effort to do in Dawntrail, and I'm very much in favor of it. Sunsign gives you a valuable reason to press that button outside of progression or suboptimal situations, and allows for some interesting decision making as to whether you're willing to hit neutral just for Sunsign, or whether you want to save it for when you really need to double dip. Whether the 4 new healing cards are useful and interesting in practice is going to rely almost entirely on the encounters we get presented with next expansion. I'm glad that both the Astral and Umbral card decks are different enough from one another to not feel completely samey, but my main concern with the mitigative and curative cards are that often we end up sitting on our off-global single-target heals a lot of the time because we just have so many, and the game's damage profiles don't really need them, with us getting that 3rd stack of Essential Dignity too.
I mean, this is exactly the same thing with the Sage thing. It's like, you just don't need... There's just not enough damage, you don't need that.
I'm quite curious to see if Dawntrail's raids are up to the task of making us use all of these abilities that we now have. On the DPS front, this feels like the first time in forever that we go into an expansion with more to press in our DPS arsenal, and I'm all here for it. This is absolutely a step in the right direction. There is a distinction between what I call active and passive buttons. Passive buttons are those cooldowns that you just instantly hit when they become available, and there you go, job done. Whereas active buttons are ones that are either always available, and you need to discern the right places to use them, such as DPS abilities with multiple charges, or dot and debuff type abilities that require some kind of upkeep. While this new addition is what I'd call a passive DPS ability, this is in my opinion a very positive addition, which if received well, could pave the way for healers getting a little bit more in 8.0. I'm basically done talking.
We're already on the copium for 8.0. It's crazy.
About my thoughts, but I thought I would firstly leave you with every changed tooltip for the Media Tour build of Dawntrail.
We're already in the Media Tour, and we're already like, man, I hope 8.0 is better.
Astro, including the new ones as well. And secondly, while you take a look at them, my thanks for watching this video. I really do appreciate you taking the time to listen to my opinions. Thank you so much, have a fantastic day, and I'll be genuinely curious to see what you think of what you've seen and heard today, so please do let me know in the comments section if you have any additional questions.
We
got to...
Okay, wait, Mage real quick.
I was somehow lucky enough to receive an access to. They get Ethereal Shift, this gap closer which we also saw showcased
Oh, so it is like en avant.
in the job action trailer.
That's
This is
cool.
a non-targeted straight line movement ability. If you want to liken it to anything, it is basically a copy of Dancer's en avant. That said, en avant is 10 yards, whereas Ethereal Shift is 15, so it goes an entire 1/3 extra distance. You also get this ability unlocked at level 40, the same as
40?
Sage's Icarus, so when you log into the game on Dawn Trail release, you'll instantly be able to play around with it. Medica 2 receives a straight upgrade. In fact, all the healers will see a new version of their de facto AoE healing spell, and in a shocking twist, it's called Medica 3. After using Presence of Mind,
50%? Wait, what did they say?
so when you log into the game, unlocked at 15, so it goes an entire 1/3 extra distance.
Yeah, 5's not a third of 10.
So it's a straight upgrade. In fact, all the healers will see a new version of their de facto AoE healing spell, and in a shocking twist, it's called Medica 3. After using
Whoa.
Presence of Mind, they gain 3 stacks of the Sacred Sight buff, which lasts for 30 seconds, and what this does is it changes the Presence of Mind button itself into Glare 4. This new instant
Glare
GCD
4?
offensive attack hits for 570 potency and deals AoE damage with drop-off.
Wait, so then what's the next glare, like, what's the next spell gonna be? Like, spammable attack. Glare Jaw?
Divine
Alright.
Caress is a new
All jaw.
off-global combo action coming off of Temperance, and this is your level 100 skill. This is a 400
We didn't get new
potency
I know, because they hate us, but like, for 8.0, bro. Surely we will in 8.0. What are they gonna do?
AoE shield which lasts for 10 seconds, and when the shield either expires or is broken, you then get a 200 potency AoE regen for another
Wow.
15. On top of that, we got a second charge of Tetragrammaton, and yes, I finally know how to
High
pronounce
glare?
it correctly. And that, aside
Oh.
from potency changes and so on, is pretty
Glare
much it.
jaw.
White Mage really didn't change in terms of its moment-to-moment gameplay almost at all, but what it did get
Wowie.
is its first ever AoE shield, which is absolutely huge value and has a lot of freedom of use because that Divine Grace prop,
Glare
the buff
duh.
that lets you execute Divine Caress, it lasts for 30 seconds. Gaining access to an AoE shield and regen without needing to cast the newly upgraded Medica 3 certainly is a big boost to the Kane Wielder's portfolio.
I mean, we went from stone to glare, so maybe we evolved to something higher.
Also,
Even
the
high
new stacks
glare.
of Glare 4, which come from Presence
Because
of
we didn't get
Mind,
high stone.
they are so good. So White Mage
Love getting
traditionally
high
has
stone.
fairly limited movement during their 2-minute burst windows, right? Because Presence of Mind increases their speed,
So
making
good.
it a little bit tougher to effectively slide cast, and it reduces the amount of distance that you can cover with each GCD. Because your new Glare 4s will likely take place within that Presence of Mind window, and their instant cast, it essentially gives you 3 whole GCDs of free movement within your burst window, every time guaranteed free of charge. That's insane. What's even better is Glare 4 is not a combo, so you can, for example, use a Glare 4, then cast a couple of normal glares, and then use another one, and so on. The freedom this provides is really exciting to me, honestly. I'm also pretty big on Ethereal Shift. It's just a lot of fun to slip and slide around, and especially within those Glare 4 windows, it's nice to have. I do think, on the whole, this is less valuable than Sage's Gap Closer, but I like that we have this additional tool now. On the whole, White Mage is still very much the same in terms of gameplay, but a few of its major weaknesses were shored up, and with its now absolutely incredible movement capabilities and AoE shielding, became even more multifaceted in the way that it can deal with incoming problems. If you like White Mage now, you'll love it in Dawn Trail. I'm basically done talking about my thoughts, but I'll leave you firstly with the tooltips on everything that was added or changed for the Media Tour build of Dawn Trail White Mage, and secondly, while you take a look at them, my thanks for watching this video. I really do appreciate you taking the time to listen to my
That's the healers. Soviet wanted to see Black Mage. 10 minutes!
I was somehow lucky enough. I actually did quite a lot of testing, so I'm going to go through the main skill changes, and then afterwards we'll talk about what I tested and what this likely means for the job. Firstly, Sharpcast has been removed from the game completely. Black Mage gets a brand new gauge in the form of their Astral Soul every time you cast certain spells, and from the job action trailer, we know that Fire 4 and Flare are within those spells. You gain a stack. At 6 stacks, you can cast Flare Star, a 350 potency GCD that will expend the gauge completely. You'll probably also notice that the Flare Star cast time is a little bit longer than your recast time. High Thunder and High Thunder 2 have been added.
Dude. Our caster is Glenn Bell. I don't know if they're still here or not.
As straight upgrades to the previous Thunder spells, and Thunder as a concept on Black Mage has been completely reworked. Now, you can only cast a Thunder spell when you have the Thunderhead buff. If you don't have the buff, the button is completely grayed out. You obtain the Thunderhead buff by going into Astral
I don't know any Black Mage stuff, so I have no idea.
Fire or Umbral
what I'm
Ice
looking at.
from either no state or from changing between the two of them.
Kinda cooked.
That's it. Ice Paradox has been completely removed from the game. Now, the only way to get a Paradox is to go into Umbral Ice 3 with 3 Umbral Hearts, and then swap to Fire, giving you a
So he said, I'm about to give Thunderhead these new raid bosses. What?
Paradox. Additionally,
Dude,
Fire Paradox is now an instant cast, and it also gives you a guaranteed Fire Starter proc. Mana font has been changed very extensively. Now it fully restores your MP, grants Astral Fire 3, gives you a Thunderhead proc, and provides you with 3 Umbral Hearts, as well as a new Paradox. It is essentially a completely full refresh of your Fire phase. You can just do an entire another Fire phase straight away. You can now stockpile 3 stacks of Polyglot instead of 2, allowing you to prepare even more Xenoglossies for burst than ever before. Leylines has a new combo action coming off of it called Retrace, which allows you to reposition your Leylines instantly into a new position, allowing you much more leniency in your placement of it. This has a 40 seconds cooldown, so you can only do it once per Leyline. In their role actions, Swiftcast has had its cooldown reduced from 60 to 40 seconds, and Adel has its duration extended from 10 to 15 seconds. This helps them fall in line with the changes that other jobs have received recently, especially to their mitigative potential. Now that I've covered the main changes, I have a lot more to say about my testing and what this actually means for the job on the whole. As an aside, there are some potency changes across the board to certain existing spells. Please bear in mind that these are subject to change, but it can definitely help you discern the intention of the developer, and I think the changes kind of make sense. Fire 3, Blizzard 3, and Flare have gained 20 potency apiece, which now puts Fire 3 only 30 potency behind a Fire 4, and interestingly, High Fire 2 and High Blizzard 2 actually lost potency. They now do 40 potency less than they did before. This makes a lot of sense based on what else we know about the job changes. So, the big question. How does MP work now? You now gain mana from using ice aspected spells whilst in ice, and the amount of mana you regenerate depends entirely on how many stacks of Umbral Ice you currently have. If you have Umbral Ice 1, you will gain 2.5k MP. Umbral Ice 2 will give you 5k, and Umbral Ice 3 is a full restore at 10k MP. So you would, for example, Blizzard 3 into Ice and then do your Blizzard 4, and that Blizzard 4 would give you the 10k MP, but if you transposed into Ice, leaving you at Umbral Ice 1, and you did the Blizzard 4 then, you would only get 2.5k MP. As a note, all Blizzard spells in Umbral Ice are created equal, so all of them provide this same amount of mana. Umbral Soul is counted as an ice spell and therefore will regenerate the same mana as casting, say, a Blizzard during downtime.
Like multiple Blizzard.
When you're in Umbral Ice, even if it's Umbral Ice 1, your ice aspected skills such as Blizzard 3 and 4 will all become 0 mana cost rather than the mana cost reduction stacking per Umbral Ice stack as it did previously. Additionally, Square Enix mentioned the removal of mana ticks. At least based on the Mediator build, I think this was a bit of a misunderstanding. What they meant to say was they removed Umbral Ice buffed mana ticks, because the natural mana tick still exists, and you can also still lucid dreaming in Ice, and it still has the same effect it did before. Of course, its value has gone down drastically due to the other changes, but I thought this was a very important and interesting note to make, because I saw a lot of Black Mage players freaking out over this. Thunder's potency is increasing quite a lot, but it's losing the secondary effect of the Thundercloud proc dealing its full damage over time as part of the initial damage, so it seems to kind of equaled itself out in that regard. I don't know where to put this, so I'll just do it here as well, but Black Mage also got a new Enochian trait upgrade, boosting its magic damage gain to 30%. Pretty big. Now regarding the build-up and spending of your brand new gauge. I've also tested a few things here. Firstly, and I'm sorry in advance because I know a lot of people will be disappointed to hear this, only Fire 4 and Flare build gauge. Nothing else. Fire 4 gives you 1 stack and Flare gives you 3 stacks. That's it. You can also only use Flare Star when you are at 6 stacks. There is no option to say use a 4 stack Flare Star for lower potency or anything like that. It's not an option. Additionally, when you lose Astral Fire either by entering ice or by timing out, your gauge will completely reset to 0. You need to use it within that Astral Fire cycle, meaning that now Black Mage is fairly locked to wanting to do 6 Fire 4s in every fire chain. I also tested whether you needed to be an Astral Fire 3 to build stacks, and I can confirm that you do not. If you do a Fire 4 from AF1, you will still obtain an Astral Soul stack. You can do the Flare Star and Despair as part of your rotation in any order, they won't somehow cancel one another out, but it's important to note that they have the same extended cast time, which is a little bit longer than Fire 4 and even longer than your base recast time. The changes to AoE and the addition of Flare Star means that you want to spend as little time as possible casting High Fire 2 and High Blizzard 2 due to their potency reductions. So I imagine now it'll be something along the lines of High Fire 2, and then you'll get your Thunder off, and then you'll just go into the double Flare and Flare Star right away. You want to get at least 2 flares per cycle to enable Flare Star, and you want to get those 3 attacks rolling as quickly and as often as possible. Regarding single target, due to you now having 2 extended casts in the form of Despair and Flare Star, assuming you have the triple casts available and they don't need to be dedicated to movement during a particular period of time, you're probably going to end up triple casting the tail end of your fire cycle in an ideal world, and using that nice little F3P or your Thunder 3 proc or maybe a Xenoglossy to enable that weave. You could also maybe play around with transposing into fire after an ice phase and using your F3P immediately to get Astral Fire 3, but whether that would be a gain or not, I don't really know. I actually don't have the available time to math it out, so I'm sure somebody else will do it for me. So what does all that mean for Black Mage? Well, non-standard rotations as we currently know them are dead. There may be room for leeway and some funky tech, but right now the job is very closely tied intentionally to ensuring that you get a full fire cycle of 6 Fire 4s every single time, then going into Ice, doing your Blizzard 4, and repeating. I think the removal of Ice Paradox and Sharpcast 2 is an especially big hit to those creative rotations, and that in general most of the changes that have been implemented seem to have been done specifically to reduce the deep complexity of the job and those 40-page guides that people love talking about, and it seems to have been done in the intention of bringing more players together onto a baseline of understanding of how the fundamentals are going to work going forward. Black Mage is now essentially on rails mechanically, but there is still quite a lot of room for creativity in terms of extending your fire phases for movement with things like your now guaranteed F3P proc and your Xenoglosses, and if it counts for anything, I still had an absolute ton of fun playing it at the Media Tour. Basically, if you play non-standard Black Mage, I'm sorry for your loss, but if you play standard Black Mage, the job for the most part feeling-wise is very unchanged, and if anything is cooler than ever. Flare Star is really fun, and it's a very serotonin-inducing button to press. Honestly, I feel like Black Mage is one of those jobs that always finds a way, so I'm looking forward to seeing what the expert players will cook up given enough time with this new iteration. I'm sure there will be some interesting tech to do, and I can't wait to see it. Thank you so much for watching.
Are there any interviews that are interesting? Media Tour interview. Chat bubbles confirmed. Peach. Viper and Pictomancer will be the first to get old alt weapons. They say when? Did they say which ones? Did they say anything? What is this? It's just him. They are coming. Didn't we hear that before, though? I swear we heard that before. It's kind of. I still can't believe she got invited to the media tour. That's wild. Which one? Don't try on the new. Awesome. Oh my god. Aye, whoa, cat, relax. I'm not a scratching pose. I don't know. Now in development. Okay, so we don't even know when. Classic. Oh, hi. You're just gonna jump up on me, huh? Okay. No blitzball. No. Jesse Cox. Oh, here's Summoner. Fast to look at Summoner. Oh yeah, wait. Let's go look. Let's go back. I'm curious about Summoner if there's anything crazy other than New Bahamut. Probably not.
I was somehow lucky enough to receive
This video, the video for the changes part is only like a minute long. Oh no.
access to. Festa is upgraded to Necrotize at level 92, dealing 440 potency of damage. Searing Light actually gets changed. Instead of being a 3% damage buff for the raid lasting 30 seconds, it is now a 5% buff lasting 20 seconds. On the whole, this should be a small net gain for the damage contribution it brings, and it also makes it fall in line with most of the other damage buffs from other jobs, rather than having this long tail end after player burst has mostly ended. Searing Light also receives an OGCD combo action in Searing Flash. You get 30 seconds to use this attack, and it's simply a new offensive ability. Solar Bahamut is the big change and the new summoner capstone. Now every second summon will be a Solar Bahamut, and then it'll alternate Bahamut and Phoenix in between. So it'll be like Solar Bahamut, then Solar Bahamut, then Phoenix, and repeat. Functionally, Solar is almost identical. It lets you use the two OGCDs, Exodus, which is an insane 1600 potency nuclear warhead, and Sunflare coming in at a slightly less impressive 700 potency. You can also use the new OGCD Lux Solaris while you have Solar Bahamut summoned. This is an AoE heal on the party, allowing you a nice little extra bit of survivability. Honestly, gameplay-wise, Summoner did not change too much at all aside from the new OGCD and Solar Bahamut's AoE heal. You'll follow the same rotation as before, with for the most part the same priorities. The three summons have had their potencies buffed too, but they're still roughly where they were before balance-wise. That said, your burst phases are absolutely stronger than ever, and if you enjoy current Summoner, you got a lot to love here. I'm basically done talking about my thoughts, but I'll leave you firstly with the tooltips on everything that was added or changed for the Media Tour build of Dawntrail Summoner, and secondly, while you take a look at them, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to my thoughts. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and let me know if you have any questions in the comments section.
That was so fast.
Solar is almost identical. It lets you use the two OGCDs, Exodus, which is an insane 1600 potency nuclear warhead, and Sunflare coming in at a slightly less impressive 700 potency. You can also use the new OGCD Lux Solaris while you have Solar Bahamut summoned. This is an AoE heal on the party, allowing you a nice little extra bit of survivability. Honestly, gameplay-wise, Summon
Monk.
I was somehow access to. First,
Monk's
basic attack combos have been shaken up in a fairly drastic way.
That.
The damage buff from Twin Snakes and the dot from Demolish have both been completely removed. In their place comes this brand new job gauge, This gauge contains elements related to the 3 main forms of monk attacks. First up is the Oppo Oppo's Fury, and you can have one of them. Then comes the Raptor's Fury, of which the gauge stores 2, and lastly is the Coel's Fury, and there's 3 of them. Now, every time you do a Dragon Kick, Twin Snakes, or Demolish, you will fill the gauge for that corresponding animal. Note that I said you fill the gauge for that animal, you don't just add 1 stat. Bootshine has been upgraded to Leaping Oppo, dealing 360 potency of damage. Rising Raptor is a new upgraded version of True Thrust, hitting at 360 potency, and Pouncing Coil is a replacement for Snap Punch, hitting for 400 potency assuming you hit the positional. Using one of these 3 attacks will consume 1 of their corresponding Fury stacks.
Wait. Is this a dungeon? I Hui Cat Tumu. Top left, he's exploring. What does that mean?
And either gain potency or a proc.
Oh, okay, so this is a dungeon.
It's a secondary effect. In the Oppo Oppo base, it keeps the Dragon Kick into Bootshine
Dungeon name leaked.
bonus of guaranteeing a crit on spending a stack. For both of the others, it increases their potency by 100 if you spend a stack. Riddle of Fire now has the combo action coming off of it, Fire's
we looked at the
Reply.
healers and Black
This is a
Mage.
1300 potency GCD attack, and when you execute it, you get the Formless Fist buff afterwards, much in the same way that you would after using a
1300.
Masterful Blitz. You have 20
1
seconds
minute.
to use this attack after hitting Riddle of Fire. Riddle of Wind also has a GCD combo action in Wind's Reply. This one's a little bit weaker, dealing 900 potency of damage.
Monk gets so many cool
You get
things, what the
15
fuck?
seconds to use Wind's Reply after pressing Riddle of Wind. Of course, Riddle of Earth is not left out to dry. It's gained its own combo action, Earth's Reply, which is an OGCD 500 potency AoE heal. Brotherhood now lasts for 20 seconds instead of the previous 15 seconds, and whilst you're under its effect, you can now build up 10 chakra stacks rather than the usual 5. Elixir Field gets an upgrade. This is Elixir Burst, with a brand new animation and enhanced potency, hitting for 900 in total. It still has the same secondary effect of opening up the Lunar Nadi, and it also provides Formless Fist. Side note, but Rising Phoenix is 900 now as well, so they've both equalized the Lunar and Solar Nadi finishers to one another. You also gain Enlightened Meditation. This is basically just a chakra button for enlightenment. It doesn't do anything at all special, it's just a nice little piece of quality of life to have. Six-Sided Star will now consume all of your current chakra stacks upon usage, gaining 80 potency to its overall damage per stack it consumes. Its base potency has also gone up quite a lot to 780. Now, one thing I'm really curious about, but I don't have time to math out, is whether you're going to use Six-Sided Star at the end of a burst window during uptime in order to get the nuke off. I wonder if it's worth it. I don't have time to figure it out, but I would love someone to work it out and tell me in the comment section. They also got a number of GCD potency buffs to bring their damage in line with the upgrades that other jobs received, and Fate has been extended from 10 to 15 seconds in duration. Second Wind has had its healing potency buffed as well, all the way up to 800. So, in terms of your moment-to-moment gameplay between burst windows, I actually love these changes. The variance with which the buttons you'd be pressing at any given time in your normal 1-2-3 combo now, in terms of the building and expending of your fury, was way more active for me than any non-buff window rotation I've dealt with in Final Fantasy XIV in years. And I fully accept that it's possible and maybe even likely that this is solely because I got about 20 minutes with the job and a handful of hours will make it click as easily and thoughtlessly as any other job, but I at least was having a blast during the time that I got with it. I was constantly keeping an eye on my gauge and switching up my next combo, and I never felt like I quite got into a mindless rhythm as you did in Monk in the past. As a side note though, I do acknowledge that stuff like double dotting Demolish and the upkeep of both effects at once, pretty much now a thing of the past. But personally, I'm okay with losing it if we get an interesting new job mechanic to make up for it. In burst windows, because you are no longer shifting your PB usage within a window to ensure that you've just had a Demolish refresh, you don't need to do that in the same way anymore. Optimal drift rotation in its current format is gone. Now it feels like you'll probably end up shifting a perfect balance, at least partially outside of burst in general, especially on the 2-minute window, in order to ensure that you can get all your big hits in, especially on your opener and the 6-minute windows and stuff like that. My guess is that it'll be essential to fit in both Masterful Blitzes, Fire's Reply and Wind's Reply, and that likely means that something is going to end up shifting out of burst very slightly, and the safest bet are a couple of PB GCDs. This is cool though. I feel like it's easier for the average person to figure out exactly how to burst on Monk, and it still retains pretty much the feeling that it had previously. Oddly enough, Monk's AoE combo attacks, such as for example 4-point Fury and Rockbreaker, do not interact with the Fury gauge at all. They neither build it nor spend it. Weird. On the whole, Monk aside from Dragoon and Pictomancer were actually the 3 jobs I had the most enjoyable time with at my Media Tour play session, and I cannot wait to play them again come 7.0 and get a little bit more stuck in. If you have any questions about the job or how parts of it interact, let me know in the comment section and I will do my best to answer you.
Oh, I can read this. Upgrades Douglin to eating Lamau to dung pour sugar bowl. Yeah. I can't read any of this. Why is this even here? It's so blurry.
Thank you.
Okay, wait, it got fixed. It got fixed.
So much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.
That was weird.
We got to see the dawn.
Oh, I'm curious about Picto.
I was somehow lucky enough to receive an invitation to the Dawn Trail Media Tour, where I was given the opportunity to test out the level 100 iterations of all 21 of the game's jobs. In order to make sure you can get all the information you want quickly, I've sectioned each of my Media Tour videos into 3 sections. Firstly comes the changes and additions, including tooltips. Then I will talk more in depth on how I feel about the jobs. It's here that I'll talk about the various little bits and pieces that I tested, how this will shift their playstyle, and give you a bit of a primer of exactly what to expect going into the next expansion. Lastly, at the end of the video, I will have a full list of the jobs tooltips from the Media Tour build, including traits. Do please bear in mind that what I played was a development build, and it's totally subject to change, especially potencies, so don't take this as a final product, but it can.
I'm back. I mean, yeah, because the intro.
Be very useful to see intention and
2-minute intro every
from the
video.
developers. Additionally, I had very limited time to test everything, and our play session was at like 400 ping due to needing to route the server access through North America, then all the way to Japan. So what you're going to be seeing from me is definitely not peak gameplay. My apologies, I did the best I could with what we had access to. Pictomancer is the new caster being added to the game, and I got about half an hour with it to experiment, learn the basics, and just enjoy it on the whole. I'm showing off the limit break at the moment, and then in a minute we'll break down its skills and how it plays. Pictomancer was actually my highlight of the entire Media Tour. It combines extended cast phases with incredibly fun instant bursts, and juggling its numerous gauges felt really rewarding to me. Pictomancer has a few different job elements you'll be looking at while playing. The canvas, firstly, which is split up into 3 parts: the creature canvas, the weapon canvas, and the landscape canvas, each of which enables a different part of your rotation. You'll paint a motif, which prepares it on the canvas and deals no damage, and then you'll render via a muse to fire off an attack. Motifs have a cast time in combat, but are instant cast GCDs outside of combat, whereas the muses are OGCD attacks. Your creature canvas has a bunch of different attacks linked to it, including 4 different components, and 2 big finisher attacks that result from them. You'll cycle through the 4 different creature components, painting and rendering them one by one, and after each 2, you'll be able to execute a special finisher. The cycle goes as follows. You'll do palm, then wing, then claw, and finally the more motif and renders in order. and render each using the Living Muse skill, which is a 40-second cooldown and 3 charges, allowing you a 1000 potency OGCD attack. Once you have Pom and Wing completed, you can use Mog of the Ages, an 1100 potency hit that renders a Moogle and has it shoot a huge beam at the enemy. Once you complete all 4 motifs and renders, your Mog of the Ages button will transform and you are then able to use Retribution of the Medine, summoning the little green Grungler and smashing the enemy for 1300 potency, again an off-global. The middle canvas is your weapon canvas, and your weapon canvas allows you to create lots of hammers. After painting a hammer motif on the canvas in much the same way as you would with the previous canvas we discussed, you can use Striking Muse. Your weapon muses have a 60-second cooldown, and they use the charge system as well with a maximum of 2 charges. Once you've done the weapon motif into Muse, you now basically get a 3-hit hammer combo to use at your leisure. These are instant cast GCDs, beginning with Hammer Stamp, going into Hammer Brush, and finishing up with Polishing Hammer. The 3 attacks hit combined for 1740 potency, and they open you up to a ton of movement and weaving space for an extended period of time, allowing you to easily execute mechanics without losing uptime. Your third and final canvas is the Landscape Canvas. This is essentially your raid buff canvas. You'll paint the Starry Sky motif, which will allow you to use Starry Muse, a 2-minute cooldown with one of the longest tooltips I've ever seen. Starry Muse gives you a 5% buff to you and the party for 20 seconds in terms of your damage, reduces your recast time on certain spells by 25% whilst within the grassy ley lines, gives you a free use of Subtractive Palette. Both of these skills we'll cover in a moment, by the way. It allows you an instant cast of Rainbow Drip and access to probably your strongest ability in Star Prism. Rainbow Drip is a spell with a huge cost and huge potency alongside it. If you look at that recast time, but on the plus side it's 900 potency. My guess is basically you're going to use this pre-pull and within your instant cast under Starry Muse, because whilst it has the Starry Muse buff, it is the same speed as a normal GCD with instant cast, but otherwise you won't get too much value out of this. Star Prism is an instant GCD that deals 1300 potency and simultaneously heals the party for 400 potency. This is locked to your 2-minute burst. That's your entire canvas gauge. But don't worry, that's only half of Pictomancer's job gauge. Your palette gauge here manages the other half of Pictomancer's gameplay. You essentially use GCD casted white Aether Hue combos to accumulate paint and palette gauge. Then you can spend the paint on high powered instant GCD attacks, and you can use the palette gauge to execute Subtractive Palette, flipping the properties of your next Aether Hue combo from white to black, drastically increasing its damage. Alongside this, it allows you to stockpile a black paint to spend as well, and you can hold up to 5 paint at a time as well as 100 gauge. Your white Aether Hue standard combo is Fire in red, followed by Arrow in green, and lastly Water in blue. There's an AoE combo version of this as well, which is literally just the same names, just with a 2 next to them. Interestingly, Pictomancer's base combos are really cool in that you can easily swap from single target to AoE, and then back to single target mid-combo without breaking it. So you could, for example, use Fire in red, then Arrow 2 in green, and then finish it up with Water in blue, and it would work fine. Very nice, please give us this for more jobs, Square Enix. This combo is also one button. Completing one of these combos gives you 25 gauge, and it also provides you a single white paint to spend on Holy in White, a 480 potency instant GCD. If you spend 50 gauge, you can use Subtractive Palette, which allows you one black Aether Hue combo of spells and also converts one of your white paint into a black. This combo is formed of Blizzard in Cyan, Stone in Yellow, and Thunder in Magenta, and it also has its own AoE version with the number 2 slap next to it. Completing this combo will flip your Aether Hue back to white, and also give you a black paint that can be spent on Comet in Black, a 780 potency instant GCD. You also have Smudge, a 15-second gap closer on a 20-second cooldown. Functionally, this is identical to White Mage's new gap closer Ethereal Shift, and it's kind of the same as Dancer's En Avant, but it travels a further distance. You also have Tempera Coat, your unique mitigation. Tempera Coat creates a shield around you for 20% of your total HP, lasting for 10 seconds. It's a 2-minute cooldown, but if the shield is broken, the cooldown is reduced by 60 seconds. On top of that, Tempera Coat has a combo action, Tempera Grasa. This is an AoE shield on the party totaling 10% of max HP, also for 10 seconds. If this shield is broken, you'll reduce Tempera Coat's cooldown by 30 seconds. You also have all of the roll actions and so on that are shared by all casters, including the newly buffed Adel. So how does all of this come together, and what do I think of Pictomancer? Your creature combo is clearly the core of the job's gameplay and your highest value set of spells aside from the burst window. Your aim is to never drift your creature motifs and muses, and ensure that you can Mog of Ages and Retribution of the Medine as often as possible, and within raid buffs whenever you can. One thing to note is that because you get 3 stacks of this on a 40-second cooldown, and there are 4 in total, the timings end up a little bit janky, so not all of them are going to be under raid buffs, unfortunately. In between this, you'll be prioritizing doing your filler painting combos to build as many subtractive palette uses as possible, because your black Aether Hue combo and finisher is, as of right now, the second strongest thing you have in your arsenal behind the creature combo. Because your landscape combo is essentially your raid buff, you want to ensure this never drifts as well. The landscape combo is actually the strongest thing you have on the whole, but because it's your raid buff, it's kind of assumed that you're going to do it on cooldown. The hammer combo is less important. With the way potencies are right now, this is the weakest set of attacks you have aside from that crazy 6-second cast. That is of course assuming that you need to prepare the motif during uptime. Luckily, you get to prepare your first hammer combo pre-pull, and then whenever there's a downtime you can set up another, and you definitely want to spend those ones. That said, if it's a choice between preparing a hammer combo during uptime for an upcoming mechanic and not being able to cast it at all, you of course start smashing those hammers. I think Pictomancer at its core is a fairly simple job actually. Has a lot of moving parts that can be difficult to initially digest, and my god it has really long tooltips, but once you're playing the job itself it all flows very naturally once you have a good idea of what to do. Speaking of flows, here are the job flow charts whilst I talk about roughly how the gameplay loop of the job's core mechanics actually play out in practice. The real difficulty of Pictomancer will be in optimizing your instance around those extended periods of casting, because really, the job has a lot of cast bars for a 7.0 caster DPS, and for me personally, I absolutely love that. I feel that a job like this has been sorely missing from the game for a while, especially since the advent of Black Mage having a ton of movement options and Summoner losing almost all of their cast bars completely. Here is every single Pictomancer tooltip for your viewing and theory crafting purposes. If you have any questions at all that I can answer about the job, let me know in the comments section and I'll do my very best. I can't stress enough how much I enjoyed playing Pictomancer. It's gone from very low on my priority list to the job out of all 21 that I want to level and play the most after I got to test it out. Honestly, since I got back from the media tour, I haven't logged into Final Fantasy XIV because I just want to play more Pictomancer, but I can't. Just a few more weeks to wait, I guess. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day.
It didn't look that fun to me, but maybe because I don't understand it.
I was somehow lucky enough to
Somehow.
test it. Viper feels like the fastest job in the game on the whole, honestly, but at its core, it's very simple. It has what genuinely feels like somewhat of an auto combo system for your basic attacks, and a fantastic level of freedom in terms of both when you execute your burst attacks and when you disengage from the enemy. Its burst window is Reaper but better, and whilst I found it difficult to get a proper read on the job as a whole because I was at 400 ping on a fast GCD job, I still very much enjoyed the time I had with it. Rather than starting with the job gauge, let's discuss the basic combo that enables it first. Viper's basic rotation revolves around the upkeep of 3 buffs and debuffs: Noxious Gnash, Hunter's Instinct, and Swift Scaled. These increase your damage dealt and reduce your weapon skill recast time, as well as increasing the amount of damage received by the enemy. Viper's combo system operates slightly differently than many in Final Fantasy XIV, in that you can interchangeably swap between combos partway through depending on what you need to do without any hassle at all. You start off your combo with either Steel Fangs or Dread Fangs. Dreadfangs is weaker, but applies a 10% damage taken up to your foe. Steelfangs is stronger. Then you can move
Okay, I'm just using, dude. It's a 100 potency difference.
on to either second hit from your starting point, going to Hunter's Sting or Swift Skin's Sting. Hunter's Sting gives you another 10% damage up, and Swift Skin's Sting provides you a 15% speed boost essentially. Then each of these second hits can combo into 2 unique finishers for a total of 4. Flank Sting Strike, Flank's Bane Fang, Hind Sting Strike, and Hind's Bane Fang all deal an equal amount of damage, and they all have a positional requirement as signified in their name. Doing one of these third hits will provide you with a buff that makes a different third hit enhanced in your next combo, and that will dictate the direction you take in your next basic combo. As soon as you've done your third hit in your combo, you will get an OGCD called Death Rattle that you need to use or lose, as in if you don't press it by the time you get your next GCD, it's gone. You have 3 dedicated buttons for off-global procs on Viper, and this one is on Serpent's Tail. Completing this combo will give you 10 gauge, which I'll touch on a little more later. What's crazy about this is that these entire 8 potential combo GCDs are on 2 buttons. If this sounds overwhelming, it's not too bad because you have Viper Sight to help you track it. These combos, like I mentioned, are condensed all the way to just 2 buttons on your GCDs, and the Viper Sight gauge will allow you to track which combo action you should be taking next of the 2 potential hittable GCDs, and this helps keep things really simple and obvious. There's also an AoE version of this that works in much the same way, using these weapon skills instead, and finishing off with Last Lash. The same logic applies here. You also have your Dreadwinder combo, which I'm going to affectionately refer to as your rat combo from now on. You see on the bottom half of the Twin Blade job gauge there are spaces for 3 red gems. Well, every time you complete a Dreadwinder combo, you get 1 gem. But more importantly, why is it called the rat combo? Well, reason number 1, funny, but reason number 2 is because these gems are called Rattling Coil. Dreadwinder is a 40-second cooldown, and you can stockpile up to 2 charges of it. After you use Dreadwinder, you gain access to Swift Skin's Coil and Hunter's Coil. These each have a positional requirement, and in practice they act pretty similarly to Gallows and Gibbet on Reaper. They combo off of one another, and you end up doing both of them one after another after a Dreadwinder. But after each of these 2 hits, you have 2 OGCD attacks to press, Twin Blood Bite and Twin Fang Bite, on the other 2 of those dedicated OGCD buttons that I mentioned before. So this combo is fast because you're going to do your Dreadwinder into 1 coil GCD, then 2 OGCDs, then the other coil GCD, and then you're going to instantly finish up again with the 2 OGCDs once more, but this time in the reverse order. There is also an AoE rat combo, and just like before, the exact same logic applies as with its single target offerings. You can then spend those rattling coils on Uncoiled Fury. This is the ranged combo that you saw at the start of the Dawntrail job action trailer, and it hits for 500 potency on the GCD. When you use Uncoiled Fury, it will proc Uncoiled Twin Fang and Uncoiled Twin Blood off of your dedicated OGCD buttons, and you need to use them right away or they'll be gone with the wind. Serpent's Ire, a 2-minute cooldown, can be used to instantly generate a rattling coil at will, and it also provides the Ready to Reawaken buff, which is a free entry into the 4th and final component of Viper's main rotation. There was a second part of the Viper gauge that I've not mentioned yet, the Serpent's Ire gauge. This one you build by doing your basic combos, and spending 50 of this gauge, or using that button I just mentioned a moment ago, will allow you to Reawaken. Reawaken is your burst phase. Activating the button alone deals 600 potency, and after that you'll be able to do a rapid multi-hit combo, weaving OGCDs in between in much the style of Machinist and Reaper's bursts. This one is a little different though, because each of the 5 GCDs are on different buttons entirely, replacing many of your basic attacks. You use Serpent's Tail, one of your dedicated OGCD buttons, to handle all of the intermediary hits. So you're going to cycle through 1st generation all the way to 4th generation rapidly, weaving numbered legacy hits alongside them, and then you finish up with Ouroboros, a 1000 potency AoE hit. You also have Writhing Snap, a ranged GCD attack, and Slither, a 30-second gap closer that can store up to 3 charges. Slither is actually extremely similar to Monk's Thunderclap in that you can use it to dash to enemies or allies alike, making it incredibly multifaceted. As they're a melee DPS, They also share all of the role actions that other melee do, including the newly enhanced Second Wind and Feint. So how did I feel about Viper on the whole? I liked it, mostly. It didn't wow me in the same way that Pictomancer did, and I'm not entirely sure how I feel about the auto combo system. Honestly, I need more time with the job to form a fully concrete opinion about that. But what I did love is how fast paced it is. The constant weaves that you can't hold on to, you need to get them off immediately or lose them entirely. They come together to help make Viper feel incredibly active despite not having too many buttons on the whole. If I remember rightly, the job has 19 buttons aside from role actions, and that's AoE as well. The Reawakening is fantastic as well. It's engaging, and I'm endlessly glad that it has a unique twist on the fast GCD burst gimmick that an increasing number of FF14 jobs are being represented with. I feel like in practice Viper is going to be a pretty easy job to play on the whole, honestly, but I found myself getting overwhelmed reading the tooltips because they were just so wordy, so it actually took me a while to figure out what I should be doing. Let me know what you think of Viper, and if you have any questions at all, please feel free to let me know in the comments section, and I'll do my best to answer you as soon as possible. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.
Do they have any party mit or like anything? Like Arcane Circle? Not Arcane Circle, like Reaper's thing? The shield and regen? They have nothing, wow. Arcane Crest. Well, these are from years ago. Yeah, it's Endwalker. Any others that we really want to see? What about Xehanort? Whoa, what's this?
Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here. Just doing a quick little intro before the video gets started. I was recently given the privilege of attending the North American Media Tour, and among the things we got to try there was one of the dungeons, Ihui Katamu, which I'm sure I pronounced completely wrong. Now, I wanted to do some videos highlighting some gameplay and the music that I got to hear while I was at the media tour. So this video is going to feature gameplay from the second boss of the dungeon, as well as the mid-dungeon boss music. And we're going to have to hear that for a while, so pretty important to get used to it. Quick disclaimer though, everything in this video is still subject to change, whether it be the game up, so don't worry. Anyway, I'll quit yapping. Enjoy the boss, enjoy the music, and I'll see you in the next one.
That's a Pokemon. It's Waklamot. Why'd he cover this when it's the NPCs? Whoa, what is this? New, like, on-screen message graphics. Whoa. This is gonna be a nightmare in Pugs, probably. I mean, this is what, the 91 dungeon? We're fucked. Killed him. What is this? Blobs. I don't think the music's that bad, but it's not great. No wait, I need to see it die. Nice, it died. The other, there's another. Oh my god, June Bob. No, oh, I didn't see this. No Blitz Ball. Bro, come on. Final boss. Where's that?
Hey everyone, before the other jobs that are matches some for you. So Yoshi P gave a firm yes. They are working on new job weapons for old ultimates. Now there's no timeline that they can promise right now, just that it is in the pipeline itself.
Yeah, that's not
However,
happening.
there was a bit of a stipulation that I didn't expect, something that matches some of the speculation people had after looking through some of the gearing options in the recent benchmark. So first and foremost, Pictomancer and Viper are actually going to be getting priority on this system. So they are going to get the new weapons for the old ultimates before the other jobs that are already missing weapons. Other jobs like Gunbreaker or Dancer are also going to be getting them, but it's not at the same point in the pipeline, so you'll have to wait a little bit longer.
Yeah, so they did, right? They have mentioned that they were going to do this like a long time ago, and they just still haven't. Like, I'm just...
If you're looking for some of the pre
I don't know, I'm skeptical.
Dawn Trail jobs to get those new weapons.
It's gonna happen anytime
a little
soon.
bit of an odd decision. It largely has to do with their pipeline for their artists who are very, very busy both at the moment and on a patch-to-patch basis. If I had to speculate, and this is just speculation on my part, it is probably because it is easier to put new weapons for the new jobs in the pipeline because they're already working on assets for those at the moment. But that is not something Yoshi P said. That is purely my speculation. All he said was, please wait a little while longer, and of course, please look forward to it. Now, my second question was kind of a curiosity one on my part. I said there are 21 non-limited jobs available in Final Fantasy XIV as of Dawn Trail. Now, many people in the community are questioning how much longer the team can continue to add 2 new jobs per expansion. So is this a discussion that the dev team has had, whether they want to go down to...
There are 21 jobs. The team had a discussion about lowering this number each expansion. What, we're gonna remove jobs? Wait, what is...
one job and
What
focus
was that
more
question
on the
wording?
existing ones, or if the plan is to continue to add 2 new jobs every expansion. Now, Yoshi P's question back to me is actually a
I
pretty
assume so,
big
but it's funny.
indication of where they're kind of leaning for this.
They're gonna delete Monk,
He
let's
asked
go.
me, would the community even be okay with that? To which my answer was, maybe it would depend on the work that's done on the other jobs, though I do think people are largely comfortable getting 2 jobs per expansion. Now, after posing that question back to me, the question then kind of leaned away from being about the 2 new job additions and focused more on kind of the overall job system as a whole. So yes, they have had the discussion about, can they continue to add 2 new jobs per expansion? Is that the route they want to go, or do they want to do something different? He said, especially with the cap now being level 100, you know, they've been adding new actions, they've been trying to consolidate buttons, but rebalancing keeps getting tougher and tougher to fit new things in. And at the same time, they've also noticed that jobs have become more homogenized as they've continued to kind of implement feedback and, you know, just make additions and whatnot. So this is kind of a regurgitation of what he said during the last live letter, where he said in 7.0 things are going to largely stay the same, and in 8.0 we're going to focus a lot more on job identity. So he just reiterated it might be time to update or renew their systems, and for this it's definitely going to take some time. He didn't want to talk too much more about it, similar to the live letter where he said we can't.
And why does he sound like he's out of breath? Do you guys hear? I can't stop. Every time, like after every second, he's like, "Yeah, so we're doing this, and then he's gonna add the weapon, and then like,
talk about 8.0.
Oh my god, I can't stand it."
He doesn't want anyone to worry, but either way, the team is always looking to make things more exciting for the player. So whatever route they feel they need to take to do that, they will. So
What's wrong with
a
me?
little bit of just, you know, it's not a yes, it's not a no, it's a lot of fluff, but at the same time, it's a little bit of insight into how the dev team is thinking as they're approaching new actions in every expansion. So
really
for now, based on him asking me if we would even be okay with that, you know, I'll take that as a, you know, they aren't planning on stopping that anytime soon, but plans change all the time, so we can't really take too much out of this answer. Now, question number 3 was
It's for that girl on Twitter. All right, Honk told me about that.
One that I asked for
the OnlyFans girl, right?
For those of you adventure plate and portrait enjoyers out there. I talked about how the community has really loved it, but it's so easy to accidentally break your portrait. You change a die, you change a piece, and then suddenly you're just staring into the screen. Nice portrait, bro. So I asked if they've been making any sort of back-end considerations on improving the system, perhaps make it so that the plate default is actually what is kind of replaces the default if you were to break the portrait itself. And we got some insight into how the system works. So I was told what's difficult about this is that we have protection for cheating the portrait. Now, he's not talking about like cheating, but essentially the portrait is, you know, it checks to make sure you have the right equipment, you own the emotes, or it just straight up doesn't work. They would need to loosen this up a lot. And the thing that makes that difficult is that the portrait is not a screenshot or a picture, as most of us can tell. It's actually just a straight up render of the character and not an image. So it's quite complex. It's really difficult to separate all of the processes, but he'll take that back to the team, and they're always looking for things and feedback on the system itself. So if we continue to provide feedback about the portrait system and any issues with it, especially the whole nice portrait thing, then they'll continue to take note and see what they can do about that system. Now, we've heard a lot about them adding, you know, 50% more rewards by the time we get to like 7.3, comparatively to 6.3 after Endwalker release. But I, of course, had to go down the route of asking about Criterion.
You could turn them off.
So I asked him straight up, like, you know, people loved Criterion too, but the motivation to do it just wasn't there because the rewards were just, you know, mounts and a couple of other things. So I asked him, what are they doing with Criterion's rewards? And he said, yes, we want to improve the rewards, and it will take time. And, you know, they're doing their best. And not just in Criterion. He said Criterion and other content have suffered from poor rewards. So they really want to improve that particular aspect. He then reiterated that by 7.3, there will be that 50% increase. And this includes, he said, variant Criterion and, of course, the new field content. And the big thing he wanted to stress is that he doesn't want to just add another minion or add another mount or an emo. No, he wants to add actual gear. Now, keep in mind, it was not specified when he said actual gear if that was an item level increase. He just said the words actual gear and actual armor. So we may read into that and be like, oh yeah, we're getting gear upgrades. I want to be clear that was not explicitly stated that this new reward would have item level, but he did also take the time to say, we have seen the feedback. We have seen that people are asking for better rewards from Criterion and from other content. And that's what we want to do to improve it. So if they have really been looking at the feedback, a lot of the feedback has been to provide item level and, again, actual gear. So I can be optimistic about that answer. I just want to add that disclaimer. It was never explicitly stated that this would be gear that increases your item level. Just so you don't come back to me later and be like, but Mr. Happy said, no, I'm covering that here. So my fifth question to Yoshi P got my favorite answer by far, not just because of what the answer was, but because of how he delivered the answer. I asked Yoshi P, I took a deep breath and I went,
oh God, he's breathing.
Said, so, Blitzball.
No.
I didn't get to say another word. He audibly shouted, no. He said it so loud that people in the other room asked me, why did Yoshi P yell no at one point? So yeah, that's it. No Blitzball. It's not just in 7.0. It means ever. My celebrations from the FanFest are to be met with the expectation we are not getting Blitzball. And it's kind of a regurgitation of the reason they weren't sure if they were going to add it in the first place. So they've had team members pitch an idea of an MMO-esque Blitzball, something that people could play together that would be a little bit more modernized. But he said that's not the nostalgic version that people came to know. So is it really the same as adding Blitzball when it's Blitzball in a
right, I remember.
name and not in
You guys
its
told me
other
about
functions?
that, I think, when we were
On the other
when I was
hand,
playing
if
FF10.
they add Blitzball as it was from Final Fantasy X, he's worried they're going to put all this work into it. People are going to play it once and then never touch it again, which was my chief concern about adding Blitzball. So because of the concerns over replayability, because of the concerns over making changes to make it more replayable, but at the same time sacrifice what Blitzball actually is, the answer is no. So we can stop asking about it. And some of y'all out there are gonna be like, oh, of course he said no. He's not going to answer that question with a yes, Happy. That would be no, it's not happening. He was very passionate about the no, and he was glad to hear that I wasn't asking for it because I wanted it, just because I needed to ask because everyone asks. Okay, moving on. My next question was about them combining the subscriptions for Final Fantasy XIV and Final Fantasy XI, because we do have the Final Fantasy XI raid coming out. So you'd assume they might do either some campaign where it's like, cheaper to buy the game or to log in or whatever, or of course that long coveted, combined sub, something that existed back in 1.0 when the systems were more closely tied together. And that's kind of the big thing that's stopping them from doing it, is that the systems for the game are just very different. They have to consider legal considerations as well when they offer a bundle subscription. Not every country where they offer the games as available, they don't have the same laws when you suddenly are tying two subscription services together. And so between the systems in the background and potential legal issues in some countries where the games operate that could become a bigger headache down the line, there's concerns. They're not letting them stop the idea as a whole. And in fact, they have been checking and updating their database on the back end to see how they would achieve this, given how different the game's registration and subscriptions.
Are you forced to play with your camera this close?
Systems are on the back end, especially with he specifically labeled play online being one of the major concerns that comes into this. So they are actually still looking into it and doing more research. It's something they don't want to say no to, but it's also not something they can just say, yeah, absolutely, let's just flip the switch for. So there you have it. I tried to get a newer answer on that one, but we kind of got the old one just a little updated, I suppose. And at this point, I had kind of exhausted all my questions. I was told I was going to get 4 to 6, and that was the 6th one. And so I was like, okay, I need another one. So I remembered back at North American Fan Festival, when it said plans for Deep Dungeon, they very specifically stated that they weren't sure they were actually doing a Deep Dungeon. So they're just plans. They might do something else. So I asked, what other content would you possibly do that would replace Deep Dungeon in Dawn Trail? And he said that he couldn't say because it would be spoilers if he did. But the big thing he wanted to emphasize on is the amount of work they're putting into the other content that is very much set in stone. He said, for example, we're working on that new field content and we're putting a lot of work into that. So with Deep Dungeon, it just might make more sense because we've already done Deep Dungeon. We have kind of a formula for it that, you know, we can update certain bits of it, but we can keep the core systems there, which makes sense. Then they can save. There's a ton of people who don't have to do like brand new system work and setting up entirely new things for us to mess with. So maybe they'll go for more than 100 floors this time. Maybe they'll add something that's more challenging, but they don't want to say. But ultimately, they're leaning towards the Deep Dungeon because it would have the same formula. So in that case, also don't expect the Deep Dungeon to have like a sweeping change. If you know how the current ones work, they wouldn't be like rewriting that from the ground up. He also wanted to reiterate that they do have content that is completely unannounced at this time. And that's normal. You know, we don't usually learn absolutely everything we're going to be getting. The big thing is that after Dawn Trail releases and things calm down a bit, they want to go over the patch plans for the rest of the expansion. This is something they did for Endwalker, and it was greatly appreciated. So it sounds like we're going to be getting a 7.1 to 7.5 patch plan at some point. He doesn't explicitly state that, but he makes a statement that makes it sound like they will do that. So please look forward to that as well. And then I still got one more question, and I was really like I was not ready to get as many questions as I did. So I did something for you Black Mage players out there. I know Yoshi P plays Black Mage. I know he had to have been heavily involved in the changes that came to Black Mage in this expansion. Be sure to check out my Black Mage video that will also be coming out at the same time as this. So one of the major concerns has been about the fact that MP requires you to cast an ice spell in order to gain it back. However, there are Black Mages that have the concern that, you know, they'll want to, you know, swap over to ice and gain their MP back during like a down for the count style phase. So like, you know, the final phase going into top where you're completely stunned and you can't do anything. You can't just like spam Umbral Soul or something. And he said that the job is actually balanced under the idea that yes, you will do like a swift cast Blizzard 4. You will just do an ice spell upon coming back in order to continue where you left off. And it's balanced in such a way that, you know, you get that ice bit out of the way when you come back, and then you'll spend so much time in fire that it won't even really matter. So it does seem like it is intentional that if you do a down for the count style mechanic, you're almost certainly going to be Blizzard 3, Blizzard 4 when you come back, and High Thunder as well. This video will be out the same time as Black Mage, so I can just use the new Black Mage spells names. Yeah, so you'll probably do those 3 when you come back before going into fire, and fire phases are incredibly long now, especially your burst fire phase. So there is a lot to do during that time. But yeah, he's made sure he's done like Savage Raids and stuff on the new Black Mage. He's made sure, excuse me, that it still feels really good. And they don't really want to lean towards like massive, like a very frequent stun mechanic. They actually very deliberately tell their dev team that people get mad when there's lots of like big downtime or stun mechanics where they can't do anything, because then their burst gets all messed up and players hate that. So they also say that's something they're not trying to do a lot very frequently. But he just said the same thing any Black Mage player will say. Learn the fight, anticipate what you're going to do next, and it should be fine. The Black Mage players are perfectly capable of strategizing around these changes. And with that, that concludes my one-on-one interview with Yoshi P from the recent media tour. Let me know what you thought of his answers in the comment section of the video below. Be sure to like and subscribe, and of course,
Papa typed Viper and Picto ultimate weapons are confirmed for older ultimates on launch. Is that what he said?
so question number being able to it released with a certain number of weapons based on the jobs available, but as they've added new jobs to the game, people have gone back and beat an answer for you. So Yoshi P gave a firm yes. They are working on new job weapons for old ultimates. Now there's no timeline that they can promise right now, just that it is in the pipeline itself. However, there was a bit of a stipulation that I didn't expect, something that matches some of the speculation people had. First and foremost, Pictomancer and Viper.
The interview was interesting. Let's watch another interview. Is this an interview?
If I can have one little personal question. I asked you at FanFest if we would see chat bubbles in the future. And you said yes.
テストのサンプルの作成はやってます。もう実はすでに。
Actually, we've already prepared samples for testing.
この一言だけで多分世界中に衝撃が走るので、ここまでにしといてもらっていい？
I think just this utterance alone has sent shockwaves throughout the world, so let's leave it here.
今度はぜひ食事をしながらワインを飲みつつ、もっと長い時間ぜひディスカッションさせてください。
I think next time, definitely, let's go out for a meal, drink some wine, and have a discussion then.
Finally, the chat bubbles are confirmed. I got to go on the FF14 media tour. I got to play the Pictomancer. I got to make a Fem Hrothgar.
What?
What I've done for like Path of Exile.
Ian? Whoa, 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 whoa. Wrong game. How dare he make... How dare he show him on a Final Fantasy XIV video?
For Blizzard for
Double die system.
straight away to this, because the double die system is a very big deal to a huge amount of people, including myself, who do like to mess around with glam quite a lot. Works quite well.
Look at the icons for the gear. What the fuck?
I will say some of the menu was in Japanese, and some of the people that we had with us couldn't speak Japanese, but it worked super simple. It actually didn't go through tons of menus to make it work. Now, we didn't actually have the ability to glam our characters there. We could recreate our own character. Of course, first things first, the floor inspector must rise to the top, but we couldn't actually glam our gear. What we could do is use the preview system, so we could, you know, make the glam plate, but just not apply it to our characters, which was fine. And the double die system works in there. Works super easily. In fact, it's got a nice function of just being able to save what you did as a theme. So if you chose like black and red or whatever it might be, it would remember that. So if you did it on your chest, you could right click your legs and it'd just be like, do you want to just apply the same thing? I would love, obviously, an apply all function. So if you've chose a color scheme that you want for your character, just do it to all your armor. That might be there. Again, I was like, what is this button doing? They're like, I'm not sure. It does look, though, I can't confirm this. I wanted to talk to Yoshi P about this, but they like kicked us out. Again, I'll get there. It looks like you might be able to save presets. So if you have a variety of color schemes that you want to apply to your character, it's like, oh, usually I roll black and red, but now I want to go blue and gold. That maybe it might save those color swatches so you can create like a palette of things you want to do. I'm not confirming that by any means, but it looked like the functionality might be there to enable you to do that. But as I said, I was planning to talk to Yoshi P about it, but we did get off track. A living, breathing world that we're supposed to be in, and things should matter. Although I don't agree with their use of Lalafells as raid markers.
もう本当に生きる世界のところに住むっていうのが非常に体験できますけど、ララフェルをレードマーカーに使うのはちょっとどうか。
Reminder, Lala abuse is never okay, all right? The next thing I wanted to do is explore the zones. I really would. I would love to pronounce to you the names of these zones, but they're not easy, man. They're really not easy. They're in my notes. They're in my cool binder because they gave us all the descriptions of the zones, but they're pretty tricky. I get why they've done it because it's the theme of a new land, new adventure, but they're like Kazama Uka, I believe, is one of the places. The dungeon in particular that you're going to be seeing shortly. In the notes, in the binder, it says that the working title is Jungle Cruise, is what they're calling it. However, on the very next page, they actually have the real name of the dungeon. Now, this might be the Japanese name, but none of us could pronounce it, including some of the staff that were there. It's Ihyuka Katsumu, something like that. So I'm just going to say the new zones. The new zones. I went and explored the new zones and was looking around to see what was going on. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. It actually allayed a lot of my concerns as a streamer in that too much vegetation and stuff actually makes the stream look bad, and it can actually be a bit of a problem these days. It's like, oh, the zone is full of clutter of trees and branches and bushes and things. but actually it was not as bad as I thought it was going to be from the previews we've seen in the live letters. It is beautiful. Waterfalls coming from everywhere. It's exactly what you're going to expect. For the big Yoshi smirk about the whole thing was that Dawn Trail is a wonderful vacation from the horrors and nightmares that we usually see. And that's the zones they let us see. We didn't get Solution 9. They gave us 2 zones and the main city, and yeah, it's all very pretty and beautiful. But there was always a little wink and a nod when they were saying that, because obviously things are going to go absolutely horrible. But it was cool to see. It was very pretty. So next thing, gameplay, obviously. I wanted to start with Pictomancer. Pictomancer, from its announcement, was the the job that I wanted to play at the start of Dawn Trail. I'm not going to be doing the MSQ for a while, because that's just a streamer thing. People want to enjoy the MSQ first, and then they'll be happy to watch along with a streamer. So for me, I always leave a delay in content, so people can go and enjoy the MSQ and things at their own pace, and then I'll jump in later. I'm fine with being patient on that. So what I wanted to do was jump in with Pictomancer, play around with that story, level it up, and then in a week or so's time, jump into the MSQ. So Pictomancer, from the previous combat live letter that we got, looked a little weird in how it played out. So I was very curious to see how this plays out. The general theme of what this is you have these 3 canvases, and then you paint on a picture, which then sets up a bunch of attacks. So you paint like an animal, so that'll be something like a bat or a Moogle, and then you get the Moogle and bat attacks. You'll paint the hammer, which then unlocks the ability. And then, because what you do once you paint you have this cast where you paint them onto the canvas.
Is this a boss?
You set up the ability, right? Then you render that image. And then once you've rendered the image into the real world, then you can utilize it in some way. So think of it like a 3-step process. Paint the image, create the image in the real world, utilize it in some way.
Manatee boss.
That's the general process of how this works. So the actual stuff with the paints, like the actual...
Aren't manatees like going extinct? Dude, PETA's gonna be pissed.
Paint attacks where you'll...
I'm gonna at them on Twitter and be like, can you guys believe this? Look what Square Enix is doing.
See like Blizzard and Cyan and things like that, which go around the little palette icon. That's more your filler stuff. And the orbs it generates, after you do a certain amount, you'll create these little orbs that go around the side of the palette. It's like 7 of them. These are more like abilities you'll cast on the move off as little fillers here and there, because they do a lot less damage, but you can fire them off straight away. So no big deal there.
Exactly.
But the main bulk of your attacks comes from the things you've painted, and those are limited by charges. There are obviously, my feedback on this was that I had a lot of fun. It's visually astonishing. You know, it feels like you're playing Super Mario World. It's very cartoony, and that's fun. It's really goofy and fun, and they've clearly put so much work into the effort. But gameplay-wise, I did have a couple of concerns with it, and Square Enix is clearly aware.
Here, one sec. Okay. Wait. Okay.
Of this problem.
No.
Painting the images onto the canvas, which is the step 1 of the process, with you get animal, you get a weapon, and you get a landscape, is quite a long cast. It's on the characters we played, it was 3.8 seconds, right? So obviously that'll be adjusted by gear, I imagine.
Ooh.
But it was 3.8 seconds. So we'll
Wow, what?
Second.
You got hit by this? Wow.
Right? So obviously that'll be adjusted by gear, I imagine.
That ping.
But it was 3.8 seconds. So we'll call it 4
ping.
for the sake of argument.
That's
a really
I mean,
long
like the
time
ping, yeah.
when you're in combat, especially as bosses get more complex, right? So you'll see in the dungeon, this is the first ever run I did of the dungeon, so we're going to be hit by a few things. It is what it is, and we're still learning the rotation. You'll occasionally see me still like reading over tooltips while I'm still sort of like fully forming the picture of how Pictomancer works. So they're clearly aware that this is not that fun and kind of a problem. So what they've done is they've made it so that if you're not in combat, these 3 pictures that you need to paint are instant cast, as long as you're out of combat. And that in dungeons works really well because you kill trash pack, you can instantly just reform all the canvases so that once you get into the next trash pack, you're ready to go with your massive burst damage, right? That comes from utilize the weapons. When you're in boss fights, though, you do have to hard cast these spells. And you notice that, like, oh, I kind of have to stand here for nearly 4 seconds because you can't do it on the move. You can swift cast it. This is where my issue with the lag came up because I remember I was talking to Scripe and I was like, it's weird. We can't swift cast.
Good night, good luck.
I can't do it on the spell. You can
Look at the bottom left during this.
swift cast it. This is where my issue with the lag came up because I remember I was talking to Scripe and I was like, it's weird. We can't swift cast the paintings to reapply the hammer. And he's like, that's really weird. But it actually turned out to be the lag. Like, I played for a while without getting the swift cast off, realizing you needed to do quite a delay to make it work. So bear that in mind. But you can swift cast one of them, which takes the like total cast time of all 3 spells from like, 11 and a bit seconds to, 8 and a bit, just under 8. But it is noticeable and it's not very fun. That was the bit I was a little like, it's kind of a drag when you're in boss fights to have to stand there and do these casts. I know in FF14 some people are used to longer cast times, so it's not too bad. It was just noticeable, certainly compared to the Viper, which we'll get to next.
Ooh, got it.
The other thing that I noticed is that Dawn Trails made a big effort in job redesign to reduce the amount of button blow, because there are lots of jobs in FF14 which have been changed now for the most part that like go 1, 2, 3. So you press 1, which makes 2 do something. So you press 2, and then that makes 3 do something, and you kind of cycle backwards and forwards. And they've obviously internally gone, why don't we just have this be one button that just changes into, instead of having 3 keybinds, why is it not just 1? So you press 1 and that changes into what 2 should be. And then you press that and then that changes into what 3 would be. Great. Wonderful. Because there are lots of jobs in Final Fantasy XIV that work that way. You press 1 to begin a process. Because they need to limit the amount of attacks you can do with the, say, weapon, the hammer is the best example here. Because it's very powerful, it's very strong, and they don't want you to just be going like, hammer attack, redraw hammer attack, redraw hammer. So they've limited it with charges, which is where your filler spell comes in. They've had to use 3 separate key bindings to make the hammer work. So you have draw hammer, which you can press once, and then that's grayed out because you've drawn the hammer. Then you have activate and render the hammer, which is on the charge system. And then you have a 3rd key binding, which is actually to attack with the hammer. So you end up with these 3 key bindings, and this applies to the other ones as well for the most part. And so what I ended up doing with my key bindings is I was trying to like make my muscle memory work as much as possible. Is I just was like, okay, we'll make hammer 3 to draw, shift 3 to render, and alt 3. So 3 was my hammer, and then I did the same for 2 and stuff like that. And it still feels a little clunky for me, is like 3 separate buttons to just deal with one aspect of the job.
The red mess. Oh, was there another one?
To draw,
oh, yeah.
Shift 3 to render, and alt 3. So 3 was my hammer, and then I did the same for 2.
This thing's just a big bug.
And it still feels a little clunky for me. It's like 3 separate buttons to just deal with one aspect of the job. But these are kind of nitpicks. Once your muscle memory kicked in, it was totally fine. It was absolutely fine. But these are kind of nitpicks. Once you muscle...
It almost looks like there's a safe spot, maybe.
Memory
like, right here.
Kicked in.
Probably not, though.
It was totally fine. It was absolutely fine. It was just one of those things that I noticed is like, this could maybe be consolidated. Is there a reason that... Because if I draw the hammer, I can't redraw it, so why do
you think we're in this dungeon?
That change to render the hammer at that point?
We're just fighting a bunch of wildlife.
And then that could be on a charge system that's
whoa, what is this?
But I assume they want you to be able to always be aware of how many charges there are. So I get why they're at this situation. It just feels like it could be polished up a little bit. But gameplay-wise, once you got going, and certainly for packs, it's super fun. Like, your character's swinging around like Mario Rabbids or something like that, smashing things to pieces, doing all that. Realm would be proud of the Pictomancer they...
I think I'm still... I mean, these... It sounds like people like Picto more than Viper. I'm still excited. I think Viper just looks way cooler.
Created. And also there's a lot of scope here to create new things. Let's go to the Viper, though. Totally the opposite. The Viper was totally opposite. Honestly, my personal opinion when I first saw the Viper was, kind of very flashy and wasn't doing it for me. And I will say, I thought the demonstration they did on the live letter wasn't incredible for the Viper. It kind of looked like just loads of buttons were lighting up and switching around. And then I saw some that were like duplicates of the same spell. I'm like, what is going on here with this action bar? But in gameplay, oh, mate, great. Super fun. This was fine. The way it works is by just maintaining a bunch of buffs. I was a little worried about that from playing jobs and classes in other games that do have a lot of plate. I call it plate spinning. You know, when you see like a circus performer spinning a bunch of plates and keeping loads of them going. I was like, I don't really like plate spinning classes where you're just sort of maintaining buff after buff after buff. It turns out, though, when you actually play it, that at least 3 out of 4 of the buffs just maintain themselves. Once they're going, they just keep going because your finishers and your extra damaging spells just extend them. And that's great. And on boss fights, all of your buffs do this. So you don't really need to worry about it at all. As long as you're semi-aware of what's going on, it all does it itself. And you're like, oh, I can just actually be a full-on DPS once I've got the ball rolling. It's totally fine. And getting the ball rolling is kind of fun once you get used to it. Because you only have
ranged
2
attack.
to mess
You
with.
got a ranged attack.
And essentially, to get all
The
your
cup
buffs
of
going,
tea.
it's different orders of those combos.
You got the cup of tea attack right here, dude. Throw the cup of tea.
So it goes like maybe 1-2-1 gives you some buffs. But then 1-2-2 gives you different buffs. But then 2-1-2 gives you the final buff, etc. That's how it works. And you get into a rhythm of what needs to be done. And obviously the game also prompts you with light ups and things like that as the ones you probably want to press next. There's some visual. You can see the actual job bar on the screen with the swords that are coming out. The different colors indicate whether you've pressed 1 or 2. So you have a little visual aid to go along with it. So essentially when you're in gameplay with the Viper, it's very just swishy, massive animations that are going on. But realistically, once you've done your first sort of attacks and got your self buffs on, the only buff you need to worry about is actually the debuff on the enemy, which is extra damage taken. Everything else just maintains itself with your natural attacks. And that once
He's
you do
using
that,
AoE. Oh shit, where?
gameplay with the Viper, it's very just swishy, massive animations that are going on.
Oh.
But realistically, once you've done your first sort of attacks and got your self buffs on, the only buff you need to worry about is actually the debuff on the enemy, which is extra damage taken. Everything else just maintains itself with your natural attacks. And that once you do that, you can then jump into your bigger attacks, which work in a similar way. You just essentially have 2 separate combo systems. You have one combo system which sets up all your buffs, and then another far more damaging and aggressive combat system, which is either single target or AoE. And this was the spec I was probably within like an hour and a half. I did a couple of dungeons on this that I was fully focused on the gameplay rather than sort of checking back onto my spell bars while I was still learning what the hell was going on. A little bit of positionals going on with the ability to obviously render those positionals pointless for a little short time. Side by side, I tended to lean in favor of the Viper. I think the Picto needs a bit more time. I'm not a big fan of downtime. I'm impatient by nature. So if you're a melee fan,
I think in general, it's just not fun to press a button that takes a long cast time that does no damage. And Picto's got a few of those, right? I mean, you gotta paint your canvases, and it doesn't even do anything. Like, I mean, you're building up to it. Maybe it feels good when you finally, you know, release the paintings or whatever. But I'm not looking forward to like sitting still painting for like 3 seconds and doing no damage. But it is what it is.
fan, you're absolutely gonna love this. Let's talk about the new dungeon. We'll call it the Jungle Cruise. Interesting, because a big part of Dawn Trail.
I'm thinking about fun, not like how good it is.
Announcement is that they're letting go of failure. We'll come back to that. So I was expecting something kind of
Oh, here's the intro
a little
cutscene.
different in the dungeon. It's not. This is actually a great introduction to the game. Certainly for people picking up Dawn Trail as their first expansion. It is a bread and butter.
Oh, we're like chasing them?
It's a classically designed FF14 dungeon in the same format we've seen since Stormblood. 3 slightly different landscapes per boss, so each boss and the area changes. So we go from boat to land. It's got some. This must be the probably one of the very first things you do when Dawn Trail starts. I imagine this is probably like introduction MSQ, very briefly, and then you're into this dungeon. And the reason I say that is you do have Urianger and Thancred in that dungeon who are playfully trying to block you off because they want to get to the city first. So I assume we're going to the city. So very similar to what we saw at the end of the Endwalker pre-patch for Dawn Trail, is they're kind of playfully having fun with their friends, and they're like, sorry. Thancred's like, sorry, friends. You'll have to take the longer way around. And then he like blocks you off so you run around. So they're goofing around and having fun. So I don't think there's anything remotely spoilerish going on in this dungeon. The last boss did prove very difficult for a lot of people at the media tour. I'll admit I died to it a couple of times while I was learning the jobs. Pretty simple once you've done it a couple of times, though, because it just has some mechanics that resolve at different times, but they're both up at the same time. So nothing like a couple of season players, what I've seen before, is you actually have multiple things happening at once, but they resolve differently. So you just have
Feeding on the beast has strengthened Apollyon's wing beats.
Know which one resolves first and then reposition for the second one. But I saw a lot of people at the media tour getting absolutely crushed into the ground. So something to bear in mind. Even Scripe died to this. And
Throw the tea. Wait, Scripe got into the media tour?
He wasn't even playing any new jobs. He was playing ones he was familiar with, so there you go. But let's go back to this not being afraid of failure. This is actually, honestly, out of everything they were talking about Dawn Trail and the demo, this is the thing that got me fired up the most. This is the idea that for a while now, CBU3 has not maybe been doing mechanics and creative ideas their encounters because of fear that people might dislike them.
Or does he?
Or they've tried similar things in the past and people have disliked them and been unhappy with what they've gotten out of it. And what they've been doing is just flat out removing it.
I mean, their options is just like, he hasn't played for a while. Their options must be like very limited maybe in terms of like EU content creators. If they're resorting to, you know, invite the guy that, you know, played for like one tier and then never again.
I was super into this. So in the interview with
never
P, I asked him about this. So take a look.
Yeah, usually for Final Fantasy they only invite Final Fantasy content creators. I don't know if they've ever invited someone that's like never played the game.
Look.
まあやっぱりこう長年しかも同じチームでこう作ってきていて
I'm still just surprised, like he barely plays. I mean, he plays the tier and then he's gone, does the ultimate gone. Asmongold, he streamed the game, yeah.
熱心にサポートしてくれて、で、まあたくさんの人に遊んでもらえるようにさらに。
Did they invite Asmongold to this?
で、みんな褒められるのはやっぱりものすごく嬉しいけど。
I can't imagine how like kind of awkward this must be, just like looking into someone's eyes and you can't understand a single fucking thing they're saying.
だんだん
But you have to act like interested, like, oh, I see, but like this whole time he's like, what?
怒られ
I can't do it.
るようなことはやっぱりが怖くなる。
Also for the person talking, like knowing that, like looking at this, knowing that they can't understand you, it's just so weird.
っていうところがどうしてもあるとは思うんです。まず昔は本当に夢中で新しいボスバトル、新しいギミックを考えてやるぜ、もっとみんなに驚いてもらうんだ、だからこそいろんなチャレンジをとにかくしてきた。でその中でもちろんうまくいったものもあるし、プレイヤーの皆さんにいやもうこのレイドのこのギミックが本当に嫌いなんだって言われたこともある。でその時にすごい大事なのはその怒られてこのギミックが嫌いだったっていうものをやっぱりもうやめよう、こういうのを作るのをやめようではなく、本当はじゃあこのギミックの何が嫌いだったんだろう、どこを直せばもっと楽しんでもらえるんだろう、だからこのギミックをさらに生かして次を目指そう。
I wonder what he's referring to specifically. What mechanic that people hated? He's talking about like mechanics of a boss fight. What?
そうであればよかったと思うし、それが理想だと思うんだけど、どうしてもダメだって言われた、嫌だって言われた、じゃあやめようでこれを繰り返しているとだんだんなんて言うんだろう、無難なものしか作らなくやっぱりなってきてしまうので、そこが
With the safe
プレイ
options.
ヤーの皆さんを楽しませたいっていう気持ちはすごくいいことだとは思うんだけど、だんだん
What is Don Don?
チャレンジが減っていく要因でもあると思ってるので、そこを今感じ始めてるっていうところがまず。
I feel like this whole thing he's talking about is just like the game in general, not even like mechanics. Is like they're afraid of like it's like they're extremely afraid of like any negative feedback or like people not liking stuff. But like since they go with the safe options, like you said, but like they do this for everything. They even do this for like, you know, job design kind of. Where it's like they're afraid of like doing something challenging or like unique or like branching out. Yeah, they do, but like I feel they're not wrong, but I mean, at some point, people are gonna get fed up with it. I think. I think at some point, maybe even like, I mean, to an extent, like people already are. Like I'm getting kind of sick of it. I feel like they just need to do like, I mean, in terms of like job design at least, like they gotta do something, man. Like they gotta do something. Like they gotta try. They just have to try. They gotta branch out. People don't like it, then you change it back. Like I don't know. They gotta do something eventually. I think people are eventually gonna get bored.
大きいです。そうだからこそチャレンジをしよう。
Fantastic.
失敗は恐れるな。失敗したらそれを糧にしてまた次へ行こうっていうのが僕が今チームに対してすごい言ってることだし、僕自身ちょっと大事にした方がいいかなって思ってるポイントです。
Oil so good.
That's super interesting because you've always been so delicate.
Did you understand him? Or was there a cut? Okay, there was a cut. I didn't see it.
That's super interesting because you've always been so delicate, whereas other MMOs swing the hammer with changes. On this note, I just want to say how grateful I am that I got the opportunity to have this interview with Yoshi P. As far as I'm aware, very few people globally got this opportunity.
Cheap viewers? Oh my god. It's no longer best viewers, it's cheap viewers. It's okay, you guys are the cheapest, don't worry.
He did lots of interviews, but most of them were audio only because they were for mainstream publications. And I have to give a massive love here to Jamie and Mark from the Square Enix PR team, who worked with me like all day. It's hard to word this. I thought a lot of people were getting interviews. I really did. And when I got there, and the fact that I got one, we've been talking about it for a while. I was really just impressed with that I'd got one. But it became very apparent early in the day because Jamie and Mark especially came to me regularly. It's like, how do you want to shoot it? How do you want it to look? Because they were filming it for us. And it turned out Yoshi P not only watches my stream, but he was very aware of a lot of the work I've done. You guys might not even be aware, but a lot of the work I've done with major heads of studios, certainly in the MMO space and in other spaces, be it Grinding Gear Games or ArenaNet or Blizzard Entertainment and the things I'd done. And Yoshi P was 100% aware of all this stuff and again had watched my stream. And it came down to, in Yoshi P's own words, is like he was watching the stream when people were asking about comparisons between World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV. And my answer impressed him so much that he was like, I want to talk to this guy. And as you can see from the beginning, we got cut off. We could have talked all day. And when I came out, the guys were, there was text messages coming out of the interview room to the other members of staff that, like, yeah, as expected, Yoshi P is now interviewing Mike because they're just completely like, they're doing the back and forth on the design of MMOs and the long-term impacts. So I'm not putting the whole interview here because it will come across, it's a little long because of the translation, right? So there was two wonderful translators in the room. So there's a translator for me, to translate into Japanese, and a translator for Yoshi P translating it into English on my behalf. So the whole interview is linked below. I think you're gonna love it. We talked a lot about jobs and where it's going in the future of FF14, encounter design, Power Rangers. Like, we had a lot of fun. And
Power
as I said, the
Rangers.
team was like, you guys have to wrap this up because we just kept going. We just kept going. And they're like, we've got one more interview to do. So again, massive, so much respect came from Yoshi P. I obviously respect the hell out of Yoshi P and what he's achieved with FF14. And hopefully we will have dinner and some wine in the future to really sort of nerd out about MMO stuff, because it was very apparent how much he was enjoying the conversation as well and laughing and joking, so it was great. In conclusion then to the media tour, that's the main stuff I got to play in the demo. Obviously no big spoilers. Is this wonderful bag. I'm going to be giving this away at PreachCon. The tickets are still available for PreachCon. If you want to come and meet some of your favorite content creators and have a great day. We'll link that down below. But there's an official Dawn Trail notepad. This is apparently a very, very, very expensive picture that came with it. There's also a compass in here that's like sealed up. There's some really wonderful. I don't want to get too much of it out, but an official Dawn Trail compass that works. We tested it at the event. It totally works. I'm keeping the hoodie though. Sorry.
I need that.
I'm keeping the hoodie. Oh no, I've knocked my thing off.
To
that was my adventure
who
into
the heck
media
asked.
store, my friends. It was incredible. And if you want to hear some wonderful things about where Final Fantasy XIV is going in the next few years, go and check out that interview because it was pretty spectacular. All right. Thank you, guys. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.
On this other stream, they got a different bot posting the same link. What the fuck? We're infected. Who's
Firstly,
this?
Ishida-san, thank you so much for your time.
No.
A big fan of 14. I started playing in Shadowbringers in 2021, but I absolutely love 14. It's changed my life.
Thank you.
And my first
Who's? I've never heard this person. Quasi.
question is actually related to that. So, Final Fantasy XIV, A Realm Reborn to Endwalker is a very long journey, very emotionally rewarding journey. But I'm wondering for the next saga, do you think it's as long a journey?
The
next
Cox
chapter
interview.
for Final Fantasy XIV.
I'm afraid of that one.
カズイさんは2021年、シャドウブリンガーズの頃から14をプレイして以来すごいファンになりました。で、まず最初の質問としては、ストーリーに関してですけれども、今回そのレルムリボーン
Wait, is this actually the beginning? You know how like the first? I mean, we went through like a whole series, like a whole story. Is this the beginning? Is Dawn Trail like the beginning of like another one of those? Or is this? Have they said that? I don't know. Or is this like a one and done kind of thing?
からシャドウブリンガーズを通してすごい感情を揺さぶるような一つの大きな物語を描いてきましたけれども、次のその新章で始まるサーガに関しては同じようなその一つの長い旅路になるようなイメージなのでしょうか。
まずは14ねプレイしてくださってありがとうございますっていうのと、実はねちょくちょく配信見てたりするので、いつもありがとうございます。
First and foremost, thank you so much for playing and sticking around with this game. We actually have seen your live streams on Twitch.
で、まず答えから言ってしまうと、サーガにするかどうかは決めてません。
So, long story short, whether or not if this is going to be another long journey, we have not decided on that yet.
で、なんでかっていうと、じゃあ僕たちレルムリボーンを作ってた頃に、サーガとしてものすごい長大な物語を作るぞって思ってレルムリボーンを始めたからかっていうと、そうじゃないからです。
The reason being, when we first created A Realm Reborn, we never had the idea that this is going to be a very long saga.
もちろんその長く物語を続けていきたいとは思ってましたし、一日でも長く14を続けたいっていう思いはありましたけど、当時はやっぱり 1.0 っていう状態からのカムバックっていうところがあったので、とにかく14を続けていくこと。
Okay, this is very general questions that just about the game overall. Chat bubbles confirmed.
Whereas
Why is 14 so careful about changes?
other MMOs swing the hammer with changes. And is that an approach you take out of fear of hatred? Or is this more, it's better to just gently move the ship rather than trying to do massive changes at once?
これ非常に面白いと思ってます。
I guess he doesn't understand well enough because they need someone to translate it back to him.
他 他の MMO はもうすごくこう大胆にダイナミックに動かすことに対して吉田さんは非常にその変化がすごい繊細だというふうに感じています。でこれっていうのは要はそのヘイトへの恐れから来るものなのか、あるいは普通に
The whole time he's just staring at him. Like, is there ever a time he looks away? Dude, it's kind of scary.
やっぱり徐々にその船をそれこそゆっくり進めるのような
Dude, they got some birds over there or what? Like Dawn Trail, like maybe they set up like a bird habitat. Like, whoa, Dawn Trail, jungle, birds, parrots.
のが初めから思っていることなんです。
僕もそもそもオンラインゲームをスタートしたのが Diablo 1で、
Diablo
オン
1?
ラインはベータからやってるくらい MMORPG もういろんなものを世界中のものを触ってここまで育ってきた人間なので、そのこうヘビースイングでプレイヤーがどれだけ混乱するか、そしてヘビースイングの意図がわからない時みんな怒るんですよやっぱり。で僕はそれをずっと見てきて本当にもったいない、こんなにいいゲームなのに、でそのコミュニケーションが足りないと開発チームは本当にこのゲームプレイしてるのか分かってないじゃないかって、やっぱりそれが僕 MMORPG にとって一番良くないって思ってきたので、できる限り自分もプレイヤーの一人として変える必要はあると思う。ただできるだけこうゆっくり慣れてってもらって変える、気づいたらこっち側にいるっていうのが僕は理想だとは思うんで、それをすごい慎重にやってるっていうのはあります。
So, I myself am a heavy online gamer. I made my debut in online gaming with Diablo 1, and I also played the Ultima Online beta. So, I've played many online games from around the world, and
what? What?
I understand that if there is a heavy swing at a certain point, it will cause player confusion, and if they don't know why that was incorporated, it will lead to anger. So I think if there is not enough communication from the developers, then it wouldn't be good because there's a lack of knowledge. As a game, there needs to be some sort of change, but I felt that that change should come incorporated gradually, and then once...
I can't. Even when this guy is talking, he's just staring at Yoshi, and Yoshi's just like looking somewhere else. Like,
people get used to it. It would make sense to them. So that is what I took care about in this policy.
That's good. If I can expand on that to dungeon design, we did the new dungeon today. It's great,
bro.
But it follows the exact same structure that we've seen in every dungeon since Stormblood, which is 3 bosses, 3 distinct areas per boss. Is that something internally you feel is the perfect dungeon experience? Because it hasn't changed in years, or is that something else where you think we could maybe you want to loosen up the reins?
今の話をちょっと展開したいんですけど、ダンジョンデザインに関してです。で、今日ハンズオンして新しいダンジョンになりました。すごい楽しかったです。ただ、ストームブラッド以降と同じダンジョン構造になっていて、ボス3体で、進んでいくっていう形になっています。で、これっていうのはもう吉田さんの中でこれが究極系なのかっていうふうに思っているのか、あるいはこれ今後何か手こ入れをしてちょっと変更を加えていくようなものなのかについて教えて。
まず僕らこういうなんていうんですか、分かりやすいそのブループリント状態になってるのを、少なくとも僕はパッケージっていう呼び方をしてます。
First and foremost, we have something that's easily understood. It's a blueprint of sorts, and I call it a package.
で、このパッケージをいろんなコンテンツごとにこうデザインする。
Oh no, he's trying to justify it. Bro, there's no justifying it.
んですけど、今のインスタンスダンジョンのパッケージっていうのは
No, I mean there is, but like, come on, man.
1回のダンジョンに行くプレイで何分かかるかっていう計算から作ってます。
So this package design is applied for each type of content, and when it comes to packages, the package for instance dungeons, it's designed based on a calculation that depending on how long it would take to do one playthrough the dungeon.
特に昔に比べて今の時代の皆さんは本当に仕事も忙しいし SNS もやらなきゃいけないし友達との家族とのコミュニケーションも必要どんどんやっぱりゲームに避ける時間っていうのは減ってきていると思っててその中でも今よりも例えばインスタンスダンジョンがあと1ボス多いってなると30分以上かかるか今日はやめとこうかなでも逆に2ボスしかいないってなるとすごい物足りないなので僕は今の状況だとこの3つのボスがいてだいたいおおよそ早ければ12分長くても20分で終わるっていうデザインはまだしばらく続けてもいいだろうっていうふうに考えてます。
So compared to the past, people are very busy, whether it be work, engaging on social media, or maybe their commitments with their friends and family and so on. So they do have less time for gaming. So when we look at an instance dungeon and maybe consider adding one more boss, from the player's perspective, they might be thinking, it's going to take me another 30 minutes. I think I'll just stop here. Then on the other end, we might consider cutting down the number of bosses so that there are just 2 bosses. And then from the player's perspective, they might be feeling that that's not enough. So when we considered that, we thought that 3 bosses was just the good amount. So if players are fast on a run through, they might be able to finish the dungeon in 12 minutes. And if they take more time, they might get through the dungeon in about 20 minutes. But we think that this is a good balance. And
I mean, I don't know if if this is like straying from the question, but like, who cares how long? I'm not even talking about like. Don't even take into consideration the length of the dungeon. I mean, yeah, you can keep it the same length, but like, do other changes to make it like not 2 trash pulls and a boss, 2 trash pulls and a boss. Like, you can. There's other things you can do to make dungeons more varied. And it not affecting the time, spent in the dungeon. Like, you can change it up a little bit.
We would like to
who cares how long it takes?
This format.
で
Switch it up a little.
でもう一個ポイントがあって開発チームにとってこのパッケージっていうのはすごくある意味コストとスケジュールが読みやすい例えば3体のボスがいて道中があるで大体フェーズ1、フェーズ2、フェーズ3に分かれてるっていう時に何人のアーティストが必要で何人のゲームデザイナーが作業して何週間かかって何個作れるっていうのがすごくもう明確になるのでマネージメントしやすくたくさんの量を作りやすいっていうメリットがあります。
And so from the development team's perspective, the package has a benefit in that it's easy for them to factor in the resources and scheduling required to develop the dungeon. So for example, there would be 3 bosses, and then there would be trash throughout the course of the dungeon, and you would have a phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, and then you would be able to know which artists and which game designers would be need to assigned to develop that, and they would know how long it would take to develop. So from a management perspective, it's really easy to manage and develop the content.
で、最終的にもっとエキサイトしたいっていうリクエストが。
So you're saying they're lazy? Okay, gotcha.
多いようならもう一個別のそのブループリントを作ればいいと思っていて、じゃあもう道中はなくしてトラッシュもなくしてもう連続してボスと4体連続で戦うような別のコンテンツ別のパッケージを作った方がどっちも納得できる。いや ID はこれぐらいの気楽さでいいよ。でももっとエキサイトしたいって人のためにもうボスラッシュみたいなコンテンツを作ればまたコンテンツのタイプも増えてコンテンツのバリエーションも増えるしさらにそれをこう数増やしていくと 豊かになっていくので、そういう考え方でこう作ってたりします。
So if we do find that maybe there are requests from players and they want to have a more exciting experience, I think the solution for that is to simply create a different blueprint. We could just remove all of the trash from the dungeon so that it would be just 4 consecutive bosses, and we could incorporate that into a different package. So for some people, instance dungeons would be fine.
Bro, fuck the package. Just do something new. Take a, I don't know, dude. Take a risk. Take a chance. It's a leveling dungeon. Who cares if it sucks? People will get over it. The package. We must abide by the package. The blueprint. Nothing can change. Bro, come on. Take a risk, man. Do anything different, please.
But for other players, maybe they could try out this content, which would be sort of like a boss rush content. So I think it's our policy that we try to develop different types of content and incorporate variation, and then that creates a more rich playing experience for the players.
Criterion, I guess so.
And did you see an influx of players from the West have a impact internally over this kind of design? Because they were used to different experiences elsewhere.
西側からの、
new
プレイヤーの、急激な増加が
What's he drinking?
伴って、
Is that a beer?
急激な増加がに伴って、他のプレイヤーの人たちは他のゲームで違うデザインをたくさん体験している。
Mountain Dew.
それ、
Yeah.
そういう人たちがたくさん流れ込んできて、
Lawyer's gonna get him.
でそれによるその多分開発への影響っていうのは何かあったでしょうか。
いや、むしろやっぱりこう今まで14をプレイしなかった人たちってなんかちょっとアニメライクだし、あんまりこうちょっと幼稚な感じもするし、あんまり自分たちに合わないんじゃないかって思ってた人たちが多いやっぱり印象で、でも遊んでもらった結果、そのやっぱり本当に多くの人たちがやっぱワールド・オブ・ウォークラフトを経験してきて14に来てるので
World of Warcraft.
ワールド・オブ・ウォークラフトがベースというかゲームデザインの参考にものすごいさせてもらってるので、そこにニュアンスはありながらこんなに違ったゲーム作るんだみたいな感じで、むしろすごく新鮮に感じてもらってるので、あんまりなんかこうだからこうしてほしいみたいなのはあんまり今のところはなかったりします。みんな純粋に楽しんでくれてるみたいな印象ですね。
Dude, those birds are going crazy.
No, rather, I think if anything, a lot of the people who haven't played Final Fantasy XIV before, they typically associate Final Fantasy XIV with having an anime style, and for them it comes across as childish, so they feel that they won't like it. But I think a lot of those people, it's just my impression, but when they do play Final Fantasy XIV, because they've experienced World of Warcraft themselves, and actually we've used World of Warcraft a lot at the basis of as reference material for our development, they will come to appreciate that even though World of Warcraft is used, you can still create such a different game experience, and I think for them it comes across as being really novel. So I think from that perspective, they really do just purely enjoy the game.
I have to tell you, the reason I didn't play Final Fantasy XIV was
Anime.
Every time someone tried to get me to play, they would send me a screenshot of people dressed as Power Rangers or Lalafels running around and telling me it was the best story ever, or cat ladies doing things in Limsa, and I immediately went, no. No.
これは絶対伝えないといけないんですけど、毎回誰かが14を始めて見てくれと勧めてきたときに必ずそれについてきたのがスクリーンショットでいろんな人がその戦隊ものの
パワーレンジャーに見
えたりとか、ララフェルが走り回ってるとか、キャットレイディがセクシーポーズを撮ってたリムサで撮ってたりとかっていうのを見て、もう僕的には
無理だと。
無理です。
はい。 やっぱり僕本当に世界中の皆さんがどういう話をしてるのかレディットも含めてすごい見てるので、そういう意味だと正直にみんなが何て言ってるかちゃんと理解してるので。
Yeah, I myself, I look at what the players from around the world are talking about. I also I check Reddit as well, so I really do understand what everyone's talking about.
でも逆にそういう人こそ本当に何かのきっかけで、まあそれこそプリーズさんだったりコンテンツクリエイターの皆さんが始めたのをきっかけに、まあそこまで言うならやってみるかって言ってやった人ほど、ごめん全然違った、イメージは違った、本当にそうじゃなかったって言ってくださるので、僕は本当それが嬉しいですよ。
But really, whenever those kinds of people start playing the game, and also you preach, and other content creators, when people really do insist, and then they finally take the plunge and try out the game, and then they realize that it was so different to their expectations, to hear this kind of feedback from you, it honestly makes me glad.
It makes me glad too, because I have never cried at a video game in my life. But I've cried 5 times. In Final Fantasy XIV, and I've ranked it because people ask me all the time as certainly Shadowbringers and Heaven's Ward.
After watching Zeppla. I've seen this same comment a few times in the past like week or so I don't know.
As the 2 in my top 5
Whoa.
best RPG games of all time. Not just MMO, RPG games. So like Chrono Trigger #1.
Maybe this is a bot to like advertise these other streamers. Maybe it's like a thing to like get the lowered stream viewers to like check out these bigger streamers. Like, yo, you heard of Zeppla? You heard of Asmongold? Probably not though.
But then we get to Shadowbringers and Heaven's Ward, and I would never have found it due to how people tried to get me to play the game.
私もすごいやってよかったなというふうに思います。で、まあ自分の人生体験の中でビデオゲームで泣くなんていうのはこれが初めての体験でした。で、実は5回ほど泣かされておりまして、まあシャドーブリンガーズとあとヘブンズウォードがもうとにかく自分の中の
He quit forever. He got invited?
RPG の、MMO とかじゃなくて RPG
Oh, he's in the comment.
もうトップ5の中の2つを占めるものとなりました。クロノトリガーが一番で、もうシャドーブリンガーセブンズボードっていうのがその次に続くっていう感じだと思います。こういう体験は他の人がこれだけ強く進めてくれなかったら絶対できなかったものだと思います。い
やもうそう言ってくれると嬉しいです。まあ僕 MMORPG の大ファンでもありますけど、やっぱり RPG のファンなので MMORPG だとしてもそのストーリーの体験っていうのを別になくしていいわけじゃないとやっぱり思ってるので、やっぱりストーリー作ってる時っていうのはこれはもう RPG なんだと思って作ってるから、もうそう言ってもらえると僕だけじゃなくて多分日本のスタッフも全員喜んでると思うので、今みんなガッツポーズしてると思うから。
Oh, but yeah, thank you so much. It makes me so happy to hear that. I myself, of course, I'm a big MMORPG fan, but at the same time, I am an RPG fan. So even though this is an MMORPG, I don't have any intention of removing the story aspect because I do place a lot of importance on the story aspect of this as an RPG in the development. And I think when we hear that kind of feedback, it's not only me, but the staff in Japan right now must be so proud, and I'm sure they're raising their fists in the air.
Are they watching?
見てますよ。本当に見てます。
Of course they do watch, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I meant now. Hello. On that aspect, one of the biggest things that surprised me about your game is you have made the #1 social game in all MMOs, and I've tried many from Ultima, PlanetSide, everything onwards.
What is this?
It surprised me how much my audience, fortunately I had this experience, were able to take part in my story.
What is that?
And bring me along. If they were in the background playing janitors or things like that, and stage plays that they made an entire story on a stage telling my leveling story.
We need a raid marker.
And they used reshaping the house in the play to change the scenery and all these tools.
Oh my god.
And I have to wonder, did you start with that intention? And now, how do you look at this environment where players are playing a game within a game separate from what you're creating internally?
今回とにかく一番
KEKW
自分が驚いたものっていうのはまあこのゲームがナンバーワンソーシャルゲームでもあるということであなたはそれを作りました。でとにかく私のオーディエンスが、私のこれまでのゲームプレイ体験をハウジングの中で舞台を作って、演者を立てて、一個一個その演劇にして再現してくれるっていうすごく心温まるエピソードがありましたと。でまあこういったツールの提供もありますし、こういったゲームいわゆるその設計してきたもの以外のゲーム体験っていうのを、もう初めからその想定したというか、こういうのを実際にこういうものが行われることをあらかじめ読んでこういった設計とかをしてくれるんでしょう。
僕のやっぱり MMORPG の一番最初のそのショックインパクトはウルティマオンラインなので、僕は今でもやっぱウルティマオンラインは本当に極限究極の MMORPG だなって思ってるところがあります。
For me, in terms of MMORPG, the first shock and the first sense of impact that I had was when I played Ultima Online. And so for me, I think Ultima Online represents the ultimate MMORPG.
自分たちで、そうでも分かる、でも自分たちで何でも作っていかなきゃいけない、ルールも作らなきゃいけない、その身も守らなきゃいけないっていうすごい難易度が高いゲームだったので、逆に今14ってかなりシステマチックにルールも含めて作ってる。当然僕は MMORPG を作るっていうか担当になった時に今まさに言ってくれたような演劇をしてくれてたり、街の中で誰かが演奏していたり、まあハイク&シークって鬼ごっこというかかくれんぼをしていたり、やっぱりこのゲームは遊ぶものじゃなくて MMO は住むものであるっていうのが僕は究極だとやっぱり思っていて、もちろんそれを目指して作ってはきたけど、本当にそれを皆さんがやってくれるかどうかはやっぱ分からないので、初めてそういうシチュエーション、みんながやっぱり日本だったりでも演劇をやってくださってる方とかいらっしゃるんで、ものすごい感動しましたよ。今でもそうですし、多分一番幸せな瞬間だと思います、我々が。
Yeah, I do understand, but you know, back then we had to create various things. We had to defend ourselves and so on. But on the other hand, with Final Fantasy XIV, we have various systems and various rules to carry out our development. And of course, with Final Fantasy XIV as an MMORPG, there are aspects which would happen, like as you mentioned, maybe some people would do a performance in the town, like acting in the town. Other people would maybe play games of hide and seek, and so I really aimed to create this world where people could actually live out their lives, but I didn't know if we would be able to achieve it unless people actually started talking about it and mentioning it. And in Japan as well, we've seen that there are people who put on these productions in terms of theatrical performances, and then when I hear about those things, it makes me extremely glad. And I think at this moment, when we hear that, it makes us the happiest.
It was one of the most astonishing things I've seen done in an MMO, because I don't think any other MMO can even practically do it in any way, shape or form.
今までの MMO 体験の中でももうものすごい 衝撃的な出来事でした。でおそらく他の MMO ではこういったことが多分できないのではないか、どんな形であれできないのではないかというふうに思ってます。
そうか、でもそれは嬉しいな。なんか多分もし自分で MMO を作るっていうチャンスが来たら、きっとそういうものをみんながやってくれるようなものを作りたいと多分思うはずなんですよ。なので、いやでもあなたのゲームではそれが実現されてますよって言われると、やっぱりめちゃくちゃ嬉しい。もともとね MMO のヘビーゲーマーなので。
Oh, wow. That makes me so happy to hear. I think, you know, if you thought that you would want to create your own MMO, I think you would probably want to be aiming for the same thing. And to hear that our game has achieved that, especially as a hardcore MMO gamer, it makes me so happy.
A living, breathing world that we're supposed to be in, and things should matter. Although I don't agree with their use of Lalafells as raid markers.
もう本当に生きる世界というところに住むっていうのが非常に体験できますけど、ララフェルをレードマーカーに使うのはちょっとどうか。
It took me a while to figure out what they were supposed to be.
それが何なのかってしばらく時間がかかりました、理解する。
なるほど。
I see.
Let's move on to jobs. I played a lot of Viper today, a lot of Pictomancer. When you're introducing new jobs into FF14 every couple of years and an ever-expanding roster of jobs, how difficult is it internally with the whole new glamour, whole new relic weapons system, and overburdening the players with what may be a problem in 6 years' time?
はい、今日序文の話に移ります。で今日たくさんバイパーだったり、テクトマンサーっていうのを遊ばせていただきました。で、まあもう結構なジョブの数になりますし、あと何年に一度またそれをさらに増やしていくっていうことを続けていますけど、内部的につまり開発においてこれがどれだけ大変なことなのか、つまり新しいグラマーも作らないといけないですし、新しいレディックウェポン武器強化コンテンツのための武器も作らないといけないし、でこういったシステムがそのプレイヤーに対して、非常に負荷になっている、可能性もある。6年後に、この実装をし続けることによって、負荷になることはないのでしょうか。
まあやっぱりいろんな MMO を自分でもプレイしてきて、やっぱりエクスパンションパックがリリースされるっていう時にワクワクする要素って、まあ、当然新しいエリア、新しいフィールドに新しい冒険に出ていけるっていうところはまあもちろんなんですけど、コンバットにどれだけ大きなその変化や追加があるか、それから種族が追加されるかどうかみたいなところは本当にエクスパンションパックの絶対花形だとまず思ってます。
So of course, I've played many MMOs, and whenever I think about MMOs and I think about a new expansion that releases, of course, there's excitement about the new areas, the new fields, the new adventure that you will go on. But I think more than anything, players would be thinking about how many big changes are there in terms of the combat, what sorts of races will be added, and so on. And I think though the jobs really are the poster boys of the expansion.
で、今のところそれが一番わかりやすいのは、やっぱ新しいジョブが追加されますっていうことによって、あ、どんなジョブが来るんだろう、どんなメカニクスを持ってるんだろう、自分に合うのかな、楽しいのかなっていう、やっぱりワクワクするポイントが一番わかりやすい。
And I think when you hear that a new job is going to be added, the easiest thing to understand is that sense of excitement when you imagine what sort of mechanics will they have, what sort of job will it be.
ただ確かにこの先40ジョブになるってもし将来を考えると、ちょっと待ってくれ、ギアはもうボックスも足りないしどれを例えば新しく始めようとした人がもうどれやったらいいのこれ40個もあるんだけど。まあ、多分どっかで限界は来るとは思ってます。
But let's say hypothetically somewhere down the line we have 40 jobs. You would have some problems in terms of maybe you don't have enough slots for your gear. And then for new players starting out, they will be completely at a loss at which job should they start playing. So there is a limit to how far we can take it.
だからどっかでおそらく考える必要が出てくるのは今あるジョブたちをよりさらに面白くするための多分システムアップデート、大きなコンバットのアップデートっていうのが多分必要になるだろうと思っていて、今まさにコンバットバトルシステムを中心とした主力メンバーでどういうビジョンを描いて次のステージへ行くかっていうのを議論している最中なので、まあさすがに40ジョブになる前にそれの答えが出るんじゃないかなと思います。
So of course we need to think about what we should do at some point, and so we could consider making the combat or the jobs more interesting and incorporating combat updates. And this is something that we are currently discussing with our combat battle system teams, because we need to consider what sort of vision will we have moving forward, and how will we approach the next stage moving forward. So these discussions are taking place. And I think probably before we get to 40 jobs, we should have decided on that.
So it's not just an excuse to wear a cool outfit on stage.
ステージでクールなコスプレをする理由にはならない。
もうね、コスプレも辛いんですよ、本当に。
But you know what? The cosplay is getting tough, really.
It was beautiful.
Thanks.
On the combat note then, with adding complexity, one thing I noticed with both the Pixomancer and the Viper, especially you're reducing button bloat this time with a lot of the classes. Do you find to cater to a new player that glowing and sound effects allow you to make very complex classes, but if you follow the guide, you'll get 90% of its effectiveness, and then it's just the 10% who want to min-max their performance?
ピックマンサー、バイパーについて、プレイしてみて、確かにボタン連打っていうプロセスは割と減って非常に複雑な工程を経ているというものになりました。で、新しいプレイヤーに向けて複雑さが増していくにつれて、例えば、UI でここのボタンが光るとか、エフェクトが出てそしたらこれを押せとかっていうような、ゲームの中でそのスキルをどんどん向上していくような仕組みっていうので、特にハードコアのプレイヤーに対しては成長中のプレイヤーに対してはそういったガイドを、でハードコアのプレイヤーに対してはその最適化を図るための道しるべになるような、そのインゲームの仕組みを実装することはあります。
正直すごい悩んでます。
Honestly speaking, I'm extremely torn.
少なくとも、今やっぱり優先的に考えるべきはレベルキャップに到達するまでは僕もう気軽に自由に遊んでもらった方がいいとは思っているので、途中でなんかこれ以上ごちゃごちゃ言うのはまだいいかなとは思ってます。
I think at the very least, what we would want to prioritize is that players can just feel at ease while they're playing their job, at least until they reach the level cap. So I wouldn't want a situation where things get messy halfway through.
ただレベルキャップに到達した時にそもそもアクションスキルのローテーションとは何か、そしてどうローテーションすると効率よくなるのか、それをやっぱりちゃんと DPS のジョブにはどっかで習うタイミングが必要なんじゃないかっていうのは今思ってます。
But I think once players have reached the level cap, they would be thinking what sort of actions would they need to be carrying out, and what sort of how would their skill rotations look? What would be an efficient skill rotation? I think there should be some sort of something to teach DPS players these aspects about their job.
逆にタンクロールをプレイしているプレイヤーにはせめてメインタンクとオフタンクがいるので、タンクをスイッチするプレイってどういう時に必要になるのかとか、スイッチするにはどうしたらいいのかぐらいは知識として持っといてもらってもいいだろうな。
And I think in the example of tank players, we could kind of inform tank players about, since we have the main tank and the sub-tank, when would they be tank switching, and in what sort of situation would the tank switch happen? This sort of information should be provided.
そしてさらにそれをシステマチックにやろうとした場合、今まさに例に挙げてくれたように、このアクション実行したなら次これを押すといいよ、これをやったなら次これがいいよってシステムで全部解説していくっていうのが確かに分かりやすいとは思う。
And so if we thought about incorporating that in a systematic way, it could be the way that you explained, so that when you press this action, something happens and it leads you on to press the other action, and this would be easy to understand.
ただ本当にゲームとしてそれでいいのかっていう思いと、またカジュアルにするのかっていう人たちもいるので、すごい悩ましい。
So, on the other hand, I think, would it really be okay to do this as a game? And also, there's the chance that people would say, hey, you're making it casual again.
すごい悩ましい。
So, I'm really torn.
どう思います？あった方がいいと思いますか？そろそろ。
But how do you feel? Do you think it should be there?
I think a good MMO class, a job, should always be accessible up to a very high level. And then there's some room for the really dedicated players to push forward, but not 100% better.
個人的にはある程度のところまではそういったガイドみたいなのがあればいいかなと思います。で、本当に頂点に達した時には
Holy shit! Those birds are going crazy, man.
さらに
Oh my god!
何かの構造
Help them!
それが良いジョブだと。
まあすごいヒントと、ある意味ディスカッションの機会をもらったので、今まさにちょうどさっきも言いましたけど、コンバットチーム中心に今後どうしていくかの大きな方針というのを固めようとしているタイミングなので、持ち帰ってさらにディスカッションを進めようと思います。
But thanks to this discussion, I've gained some hints about what we could do, and this is a good opportunity for discussion. So, as I mentioned, we are currently discussing the possibilities with the combat team, and we're currently working on solidifying our plan. So I'll definitely take this information back with me, and we can consider it together.
Superb. Well, we're out of time, unfortunately, but I want to thank you very much for this. If I can have one little personal question. I asked you at FanFest if we would see chat bubbles in the future. And you said yes.
時間なのでどうもありがとうございました。最後にファンフェスで伺ったチャットバブルの件、確かあの時はイエスって言ってたと思う。
For the stage plays.
テストのサンプルの作成はやってます。もう実はすでに。
Actually, we've already prepared samples for testing.
この一言だけで多分世界中に衝撃が走るので、ここまでにしといてもらっていい？
Fucking English.
I think just this utterance alone has sent shockwaves throughout the world, so let's leave it here.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Nuki.
今度はぜひ食事をしながらワインを飲みつつ、もっと長い時間ぜひディスカッションさせてください。
I think next time definitely let's go out for a meal, drink some wine, and have a discussion then.
I would love that.
はい、もちろんです。ありがとうございます。
Of course, I will do. Thank you.
皆さんもありがとうございました。
Thank you, everyone else here.
Fuck this Baka Gaijin. Huh. Uh-huh. Good interview. Yeah, I think that was good. You said Gaijin correctly. Oh, my bad. Ruined it. Come on, it's Pride Month. Let's gauge in now. The Ultimate. Wait, did they mention the Ultimate at all? They ask anything about the Ultimate? Upcoming one? Huh. I guess not. I guess there's not really too much to ask, I guess. About. Huh. I'm probably, you guys gonna hate me, but I think I'm gonna head out for a bit and come back. I have to do some stuff. I gotta eat. I gotta shower. I woke up and I immediately went to the computer. I gotta go shower and I gotta eat and I gotta get the trash ready for tonight. Clean litter boxes for tonight. Trash goes out tomorrow morning. We just got here. I mean, I'll be back in like a few hours. Probably, maybe 2 or 3 hours. So, I'm not gone all forever. What's tonight? I don't know. I don't have anything to do. Nothing planned. I don't know, maybe Rebirth. I don't know. Fuck. The infamous Hrothgar. What do you guys know about the infamous Hrothgar? Scary. I got distracted now. I'm scrolling through YouTube and there's infamous Hrothgar FFXIV drama.
Welcome back to my Final Fantasy IV of Final Fantasy XIV. And it's nice to see one. Been on a break and 90 with no, but it was time for my melee. Oh shit. Healthy players. I should get to know these other like-minded people who are big fans.
I don't know. Here, if you want to watch about the infamous Hrothgar player, here you go. All right, I'll be back in a bit. Goodbye, good luck. I'll be back.